world's most notorious serial murderers found that their homicidal instincts can be traced to a single incident in childhood when they were denied a toy that they really wanted.
Nearly all violent serial offenders, from John Wayne Gacy and Jeffrey Dahmer to the DC snipers, exhibited their first violent impulses shortly after being told as children that a video game was too expensive, or that they had a perfectly good Lego set at home and they could make do with that.
Researchers found that an isolated occurrence in which a parent refuses to buy a stuffed animal or candy bar for their child can immediately trigger the development of sociopathic tendencies.
I was in such a blind rage that I went up to my room, sawed the heads off all my action figures, and ejaculated into their body cavities.
This was most notably the case with Jeffrey Dahmer, who began decapitating stray dogs and placing their heads on spikes shortly after being denied an Etch-a-Sketch.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live here at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. We are not live right now. This is a pre-recorded show. Recorded at the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which officially begins today. And it's great to see so many familiar faces. It's a little frustrating because I've been very busy the last few days and traveling back and forth between the hotel room, the Free Talk Live site here, and the Free Talk Live studio down there at the bottom of the hill. Where the
it's a lot of traveling.
It is. And if you've ever been to the Porcupine Freedom Festival, then you know that if you have to travel anywhere, it takes forever.
Right.
Like walking 50 feet takes 20 minutes. Because you're constantly seeing people. You're constantly talking with people that you haven't seen throughout the last year.
Right. If last year.
Right. Yeah, because not everyone comes up every single year.
Right.
And we had a little audio issue there, so I actually briefly stopped the recording because there's some static in the speaker because I'm using a very weird setup because I didn't have one tiny little adapter that I needed in order to make everything work. I don't know what I did with this adapter. I've been kind of busy the last month or so since getting out of federal prison. And there's no... I could find this adapter if I was at my place in, Jaffrey.
Right.
But we're not at my place in Jaffrey. So I thought this morning that it would be at the mobile studio. Or that we would at least have one down there. Because it is a mobile studio. Of course not. But when I got down there, it was locked for some reason, and I didn't take my key with me, obviously, because it was unlocked the last time I was there, and This is Porcfest. There's not very much theft or vandalism or anything here.
It really isn't.
And the Porcupine Freedom Festival is going to be using it from 8 o'clock in the morning until about 8 o'clock at night.
Right.
I'm not going to come down here at 8 o'clock in the morning to unlock the thing for them.
Right.
And I suspect that none of the other people with keys are going to do that either. So my vote, which is incidentally the only vote that matters in this regard, is to leave the thing unlocked for them to use. But anyway, so I had to go down there. It was locked, prompting me to return to my hotel room all the way at the top of the hill to get the key for that, and then go down there only to find that the adapter that I was looking for wasn't even there. So that was a lot of fun.
Hey, it's all wizardry.
And as always, new miscellaneous audio issues pop up every single time I click the record button, it seems like, especially here on the first day, because there's always something I'm missing or something that I didn't remember to connect, and it's a process, right?
I mean, I know this isn't what's actually happening, but from my perspective, you're taking a bunch of snakes and jamming them into different boxes, and somehow that lets us record this and lets people hear it. Sure.
That's a fair assessment of things, realistically, because if you've ever looked behind the network equipment and the audio equipment at the studio at Ian's house.
It is absolutely terrifying.
Yes.
I thought logically, okay, there is a set number of actual cables here. They lead from places to other places. It has got to be possible for me to go, okay, the sound comes out of my mouth, goes into this thing. Where does that go? I was wrong. You can't do that. It's just an absolute pit of vipers. They're bundled in random ways, and they're tucked behind here, and you have no idea which one of these identical cords is the one you're looking for.
Well, the good news is most of the important ones are actually labeled, but it's not a helpful label. It's just a number. Like, it will have the number 6 on one end and the number 6 on the other end. So you don't have to actually trace the cable to figure out where it's going. But the label itself tells you nothing about where it's actually going. Like, this one has 10 feet marked on it, and the next one has 15 feet. That's a useless label. Like, maybe in some sense it's helpful to have a 15 feet cable versus a 10 foot, but I can't imagine what that circumstance really is.
So this is why it is just so absolutely profoundly evil to find out, oh yeah, they just decided to jerk a bunch of wires out. It's like, no!
You're referring to
I don't know where any of them go.
You're referring to the FBI raid in March the 16th of 2021, the catalyst which led to Ian and myself being arrested and ultimately going to federal prison. The FBI, in the process of raiding the studio, they unplugged several cables. We don't know exactly how many. And, of course, I was in jail at the time that you guys were doing the show that night.
Right.
I was being released that day, but I was still in jail at that time. So, and it was another week before I was allowed to go out to the studio anyway. So shout out to all you guys for being able to put that together as much as you did.
I mean, especially Captain. I don't think anyone knew. I don't think he knew that he had the ability to do that by just like, okay, well, it looks like this goes here. I'm pretty sure he doesn't consciously know how this system works, but on some level his brain goes, oh, well, I've seen things like this go in things like this.
Yep.
And somehow he got it to work. So we're going to require magic of you and capture your top wizards at the same time.
Yeah. Well, the good news was, I mean, the only things we didn't have after that point when the captain got out there and put everything back together was we did not have the ability to take phone calls, and we did not have a dump button. And the two things were related in the long run. And then I got all of that back, those last two things up and running, but I screwed up. I made a logical mistake, as can happen when you're dealing with large numbers of cables and a lot of complex equipment where you're only like 80% sure what it does, and you're sort of guessing the other 20%. And the result was that the dump button was in front of the audio that we were sending out to radio instead of behind it. So when I hit the dump button on, actually this was Bonnie's sister who had called and who had been told not to, say any of those words. When I hit the dump button, nothing happened.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it all just went out on the air because it was in the wrong order. So I fixed that real quick, and then I had the brilliant idea to actually test this with Westwood One, who was our satellite provider at the time. I was like, hey, I'm gonna say the word cat, but I'm gonna hit the dump button, so you should hear a toilet flush, and if you hear me say the word cat, let me know when I call you after this segment so we can continue figuring this thing out. Luckily, it was fixed at that point. But they unplugged the fiber optics line, the fiber optics internet. Of course, we had backup internet through, I think, Comcast or Spectrum or something. But they unplugged the actual fiber optics it is the main internet source for the studio. It was just all very peculiar, very petty. Somehow, one of these webcams that we have in the studio, because we have I think we have 4 connected. Anyway, one of them managed to capture a photograph of an FBI agent taking it down. And I don't know what feature could possibly exist that would have allowed that to happen. But
so it's just as mysterious to you sometimes.
Yes. Well,
even when you're one of the top wizards.
As far as I'm aware, there aren't any webcams with that kind of motion disturbance. Like a dash cam has that sort of thing to emergency record in the event of an automobile accident. But I don't think webcams have that sort of thing. And that's more or less what seems to have triggered. Because it sure enough, it captured a video of this FBI agent dressed in all black.
I don't mean to alarm you, but our inanimate objects appear to be acting with self-preservation instincts.
Yes, it's very peculiar. And I cannot imagine how that came about or why it came about, but it did. And it's a fascinating photo. But we got better than that because they released our DVR equipments back to us, at our security video systems at home. My video was actually not nearly as interesting as Ian's because they breached my door almost immediately and just came in with guns, not blazing, but guns pointed, ready to be blazing. So there was much less video of them outside of my place, preparing to drive a bearcat through the door and all of that nonsense that they did at the studio.
Right.
But it was an interesting video nonetheless, but Ian got his back at the same time, and I was going to release my video, but then he released his, and I was like, look, mine can't compare to this. Mine is like I can't think of a good example. It's terrible quality versus high quality, right?
Well, and we didn't have the coolest moment where you're like, no, I'm not going to drop my towel.
That's only on the body cams from the FBI agents. And that was a weird one because I'm not a bashful or shy person. But sure enough, as I was standing on I was only wearing a pair of panties and a blanket that I had wrapped around me because that was how I was sleeping. And I heard all this commotion downstairs, so I went running down there, got screaming profanities and asking what was going on, and it turned out to be the FBI, which was quite a surprise to me. Anyway, they wanted me to put my hands up in the air, which would have caused the blanket that I was wearing to fall and left me standing there in a pair of underwear in front of all of these FBI agents. I straight up refused to do it. At first they said, Arya, stop moving or we will open fire. Because I was running down the stairs screaming at them. So I did stop moving. And they instructed me to turn around and put my hands in the air. And I did partially, but not enough to drop the blanket that I was wearing. And they were not happy about that. They kept insisting. I was like, well, look, they said, you have to raise your hands up and take the blanket off. I was like, well, look, I'm not doing that. So we're at an impasse here. Something's got to happen. So this female FBI agent came up behind me, and she lowered my arms so that the blanket wouldn't fall, and she handcuffed me. And then I was taken outside where they opened every single door in the house in New Hampshire at 6 o'clock in the morning in the middle of a March. I think it was 25 degrees that morning. So every door, every window in the house just wide open, just 25-degree air circulating through. And Michael Hampton was there, and apparently he slept in his room in his underwear. And he came down they brought him down the stairs and they handcuffed him and they made him stand there. And he was undergoing chemotherapy at that time. He was a stage 4 colon cancer patient. And they made him stand there in these conditions until I point out, guys, there's a blanket like right there on that couch, like literally right on the other side. Can you give it to him or something? He's a cancer patient. You can't treat people like this. And they did. So, but they made Bonnie put on shoes that had glass in them. And what I took away from this is like, if you tell these people no, then more often than not, you will get your way. Not get my way, because I didn't want to get arrested, obviously.
Yeah, no, there's a fine line where it's in between, like, being defiant enough to get shot and completely compliant, in which case they'll just be awful to you.
Yeah, making her put on the shoes that had broken glass in them, absolutely inexcusable. Like, that could cause some serious health issues.
Seriously.
But they didn't care. But they would never have done that at my house, and they would never have done that to Ian, because I suspect at this point they wouldn't try that crap with Bonnie now either. But back then they did, and it worked. But I would have been like, no, dude, those have glass in them. I'm not putting them on. I'll knock the glass out and put them on.
Right.
But they didn't even give me that luxury, not immediately. They didn't ultimately take me upstairs. The result of all of this was that we were charged with operating an unlicensed money transmitting business and some miscellaneous other things. I ended up taking a plea deal about 2 months before the trial started, which I still don't like a whole lot, but you got to understand. My attorney told me point blank, oh, they're going to find you guilty. You're going to get found guilty. This is a slam dunk case. You were operating an unlicensed money transmitting business. You're going to get found guilty. And we had fought that charge and tried to get it dismissed on the grounds that the FinCEN organization, I don't know what that stands for. They had no authority.
Financial Crimes Investigation, I think.
Something like that, yeah. So we argued that they had no constitutional authority to require a license to transact Bitcoin in the first place, which is a solid argument.
Right.
But the judge threw it out. But the good news is that's the basis of Ian's appeal moving forward. So I was at least in the fight long enough, because my attorney was the one who made that motion and the Daubert motion that prohibited them from allowing the FBI agent to call himself an expert in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and blockchain.
Good call.
Yeah. So he could call himself, I think, experienced with these things, but he was not allowed to be referred to as an expert. And the point, what we were trying to do, we wanted to take all of those tools like Chainalysis that analyze Bitcoin networks, and we wanted to investigate them in court. Look, if you're using this against us, we have to know that this software actually works.
Right.
And to do that, we have to actually audit. It's called a Daubert motion of evidential standards or something like that, arguing basically that Chainalysis and other blockchain analysis tools do not meet this standard to be admissible as evidence in a federal courtroom. And that was a mixed bag that was both approved and denied because it ultimately turned out to be irrelevant. They didn't need blockchain analysis tools on us. And then I went to Porcfest for my final hurrah out in
I
the free
remember
world.
vividly.
Yeah.
The countdown clock.
Yeah, about that. If you needed proof of how bad of a mental place I was in at that time, is not only did I have the idea to get a bright red countdown timer to count down how many seconds I had until I had to go to federal prison. Not only did I have the idea, but I went through with it and bought the stupid thing and put it here on the table. So I had to look at it all the time. So
Yeah, I've reached the point in my journey of rebellion where really I just am not going to help the bastards torture me. That's the plan. They want to torture me, but they definitely want my assistance doing it. And that's just where I draw the line. Like, okay, this is clearly a torture. I'm not going to engage in it against myself.
sure, which is fair. I don't
I
think
will say it was a very striking thing to go like, whoa, that is your countdown timer.
it was striking, and I don't think it in and of itself really had any impact on my mental state at the time. I was just in a dark place. I was about to go to federal prison, right?
So it's kind of gallows humor then.
Yeah, because I don't think it really affected me, and it was a really good conversation starter.
Right.
That was also the year that I had my tank top made that says, "Ask me about my federal prison sentence," because I love gallows humor.
Right.
I really do. And when I was running for state house back in 2022, I had signs made that says "Aria for the big house." But it scratched out the word big and then wrote state in underneath it. The big house, of course, being a euphemism for jail.
Right.
The argument being that, hey, instead of putting me in jail, put me in the state house. Unfortunately, my attorney was like, yeah, look, I'm just going to let you know, if you put these signs up and Judge LaPlante sees them, he's going to put you in prison. He's not going to be amused by this. He's going to think you're making a mockery of the entire thing. And I was like, all right, well, I won't put up the signs then. Because despite everything, I would rather have avoided prison than gone there. One weird thing that I've noticed being a lot here is people like, wow, I bet you're glad to be out. So I think I'm going to start responding to that with, well, actually, I kind of miss the place. Because what a stupid freaking question is that? I bet you're glad to be out. You think? No, I miss it. Federal prison was great. Best year of my life.
I wish I could be more institutionalized, because
Right.
that's really what I'm all about, is state power and institutions having control of my life.
And they do. When you're in federal prison, they have control over everything. Every color shirt that you're allowed to wear. Obviously, what your
And
meals
yet
are.
they somehow can't keep drugs out of the places.
No, especially not where I was. Like it's so. I never did it, obviously, because I don't do mess around with drugs anyway. Like I drink alcohol once in a while, but that's it. And I do shrooms occasionally, but I haven't done shrooms in several years. But a lot of people did bring in drugs, and it's really, really easy to do where I was because there's no bars on the windows, and the windows open because there's no air conditioning. So in the summer, like you have to be allowed to open the windows.
Right.
And the result of all of this is that people would get cell phones brought in, which was super easy. And then they would use the cell phones to engage in actual, well, relatively private. None of these people used Signal or Wire or even Telegram or anything. They just used basic SMS. Dude, you're tweeting over there. You're putting this on Twitter. Your location is on. I think the BOP is going to figure this out.
Could be.
But no one, that to my knowledge, no one actually ever got busted for that because that requires way more work than your average BOP employee is willing to do. Like these,
Right.
they're on the level of DMV employees as far as how lazy they are.
I think that if not the majority, then a significant portion of our freedom exists simply out of laziness on behalf of state actors. If they were motivated to take away our freedom instead of just, check the boxes, get their paycheck, be a national hero by, making sure everyone is as enslaved as possible. If they actually wanted to do this, we'd be in trouble. But they're very lazy. Like, they always go for the lowest hanging fruit.
They're so lazy that I watched people get caught with things that they very definitely should not have had. Like, one person got caught with a vape, which would send you to the SHU, the Special Housing Unit, segregation, basically, for 36 days, or 30 days, sorry. You would lose 56 days of good time behavior, so it extends your sentence by 56 days. And you don't earn what they call FSA credits in there, which I'm going to be explaining Wednesday at 4 in the afternoon when I speak at the Pavilion here at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. So be prepared to have a stroke because it's really, the explanation is really stupid. It takes a lot of inmates several weeks to really understand how these things work. And then it's all they ever talk about. Did your credits drop? Did your credits drop? I checked, my credits dropped. Like, dude, they were asking each other this in December, and their release dates were in October the next year. I'm like, what does it matter if your credits dropped on the 28th or the 31st? It makes no difference to you. But, it's the only one thing they have to obsess over.
Well, that's how I stare at the hourglass, don't you see?
It is. And because of that, your release date online, if people go to BOP.gov and they check Ian Freeman's release date, which, by the way, you should go there to get the information on how to write them. But I'm going to give that to you at the end of this segment because I like to throw that out there as much as humanly possible.
Right.
But if you go check his release date, it's going to be lower now than it was when he first got there at the beginning of May. Probably.
Because of his earned
FSA
good behavior
credits.
time.
Well, it's FSA credits. Your good behavior time, that comes right off the top. They just assume you're going to get that. But they do not assume you're going to get FSA credits. You have to earn those every single month by engaging in what they call programming, which is also really stupid.
What is FSA anyway?
First Step Act. It was passed in 2021. And what it does, it reduces your sentence. It basically cuts most sentences in half. And this is a great thing, except you have to earn those things, and therefore they're not guaranteed you. So when you're sitting there talking to that prosecutor and your attorney's talking to you and the prosecutor says, we're going to put you in prison for 10 years, your attorney doesn't even know, usually, to say, well, yeah, but look, it's probably only going to be realistically 5 years that you'll be in prison. And it gives the prosecutors extra leverage because instead of just reducing the sentences, which would be the rational, sane approach for Congress to do, the FSA is
no, this way we can employ bureaucrats while doing this in just needlessly circuitous ways.
And the FSA credit it's the perfect example of Congress recognizing that sentences are too high. Like, just on average, they're sentencing people far too harshly, especially for drug crimes. But instead of just doing the same thing and lowering those sentences, they created the First Step Act, which allows people to reduce their sentence while still giving prosecutors the leverage to say, well, look, you were selling fentanyl. You're facing a 10-year minimum sentence.
Right.
So you better accept this deal or we're going to hit you with multiple charges.
Well, and apart from just, hiring your buddies as bureaucrats, like, that's what they get out of this, is that, I mean, no one ever goes to trial on anything because they scare you with, okay, well, we're going to hit you with this, and this has a 5-year sentence, and this has a 2-year sentence, and you're going to be in there for a real long time. So everyone goes, oh, crap. Well, how do I not do that? Well, if you just plead guilty, we'll cut you down to just, a couple years.
Right. Having gone through it, I can say it's not really a matter of fear, right? It's not, people aren't taking plea deals because they're afraid. It's simple loss calculation. Would you rather lose 5 years of your life or 2 years of your life? So it's not about being afraid to lose 5 years. It's about, look, I'm going to lose here. So I want to lose the minimum amount of stuff possible, especially when it's time off your life that you're not going to get back. And it's going to permanently affect you. Maybe not as much after an 11-month sentence, but there's going to be serious physiological changes. Like, I hope Ian has learned by now that he needs to buy lotion regularly from commissary because there at Devon's, you're basically bathing in swamp water battery acid, and it's miserable for your skin. And everyone there has to use lotion all the time. Things like that over a period of 4 or 5 years, they're going to permanently damage your skin and age you. And it's cruel and vicious and petty and vindictive, and it could all be avoided if Congress would just lower the freaking sentences. But there's more coming up here. We are here at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. And of course, Ian Freeman is missing. He's been missing for the last several years, but now he's in federal prison. More about that coming up. And you're welcome to come hang out with us at...
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by that treasury. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way by doing it first, nearly a decade ago. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
From a feature story news in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has disbanded his war cabinet. It was set up in the wake of the October 7th attack by Hamas, which sparked a deadly conflict in Gaza. But opposition leader Benny Gantz quit the cabinet, citing a lack of strategy for the ongoing war. Sarah Coates is our correspondent in Israel.
Now, this was widely expected after the departure of Benny Gantz and also the former military chief of staff Gadi Eisenkot, who held an observer role on the war cabinet. They joined after October 7 to stop the far right from making key decisions on war efforts and also to show unity. Now, the far right elements of the government, specifically the National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir and the Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, they have been pushing for a spot on this very limited war cabinet, and this is really being now seen as a move, as a way of preventing this from happening, which could further strain relations with international partners.
Meanwhile, Israel has begun daily tactical pauses to allow for humanitarian aid deliveries into Gaza. The United Nations aid agency, UNRWA, has welcomed the move but says there are still some logistical issues to move the aid to affected areas. Jody Jacobs reports from the UN headquarters in New York.
As of Monday, trucks carrying humanitarian aid were allowed to safely cross into Gaza via the Karim Shalom crossing. For now, this will be the only border crossing that will be used for aid deliveries as part of these daily tactical pauses in fighting along the main roads into Gaza. UNRWA, the UN's aid organization in Gaza, says it hopes that Hamas will respect the decision.
Russian President Vladimir Putin will travel to North Korea on Tuesday. Kim Jong-un visited Russia last year. The two strongmen leaders have a closening relationship, assisting each other's countries with military goals. On Monday, NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg met with US President Joe Biden at the White House. It comes after nearly 80 countries convened in Switzerland for a summit aimed at agreeing a peace deal for Ukraine, though Russia was not invited and China did not attend. South Africa's former president Jacob Zuma says his political party, MK, will join the opposition alliance in parliament following last month's elections. Their vote was won by President Cyril Ramaphosa's African National Congress, but it lost its outright majority for the first time since the end of apartheid. And
Je pense qu'on est une génération qui peut faire la différence.
The captain of France's national football team, Kylian Mbappe, is calling upon young people to vote in the upcoming French election, warning that extremists are at the gates of power. His timely intervention during the European Championship follows French President Emmanuel Macron's decision to call a snap parliamentary election, on the heels of a big victory for his rival Marine Le Pen's right-wing national rally in European contests. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and we are here in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Going to be an intensely hot week this week in the mid-90s, so be prepared for that. Bring lots of water. I'm actually going to buy another case of water when I go into town later today, to just throw it on the table back here with a sign that says something like, take one, don't die.
Take one, don't die.
Yeah, because it's going to be brutally hot and humid and muggy and honestly a little bit miserable. But it's going to be more than made up by all the awesome people here and all the great events that are happening. I'm told that Ron Paul is not coming this year. He hasn't been here for several years, but he is doing a speech. So they're videoing that in, apparently, down at the pavilion someday this week. I don't recall exactly when.
I mean, fair enough. He is a very old man at this point.
He is. He's
still
amazing,
90s, but very, very old.
Yeah. We had him on Free Talk Live a few years ago, and I didn't tell him then because it was something that I figured he probably hears all the time, but he's the reason that I became affiliated with the liberty. He was the one who introduced me to libertarianism and to the ideas of liberty, and I owe him a huge debt of gratitude for that. But I didn't tell him that at the time, and Ian was like, well, you should have. But, dude, he probably hears that from everyone all the freaking time.
Yeah, I don't know if I would ever get tired of hearing that, though. It's like, hey, you made me like freedom.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And he certainly did. He did a great job of that.
Well, and I mean, you got to figure, like, the guy put himself at risk to do this. Like, you are entangling yourself with the largest mafia on Earth. This is not a risk-free process. And then you're going to not do the things that they expect you to do. So you're literally just throwing sand in their figurative machine and just grinding their gears a little bit harder by lobbyist money not doing what it's supposed to do for this corrupt monstrosity.
And didn't they refer to him as Dr. No unofficially?
Yeah.
Because he always said no on everything that people brought to him?
Well, so the rule was he would never say yes if it was against the Constitution. And they literally bring him only things that are against the Constitution.
I mean, that sounds about right. And I mean, one of the things I want to talk about Wednesday is that the Constitution doesn't matter. Like our argument that the FinCEN regulations requiring a license for Bitcoin transactions, it was unconstitutional, ultimately didn't matter. And the reason for that was because there was no regulation or law that we actually broke. Right. Yeah, so it's important to keep that in mind. The prosecutors were not allowed to even mention the regulation that we allegedly broke because of the motion to dismiss. We had beaten that. And they're like, no, we're going to say that you did X, Y, and Z, and therefore you're guilty of this crime of operating an unlicensed money transmitting business. But we're not allowed to point to the actual law that you broke. So we're alleged to have committed an action that they're calling criminal and that they successfully called criminal in spite of the fact that there's no law on the books. And this happened in a federal courtroom, despite there being no law on the books that regulated Bitcoin transactions.
Right.
We were found guilty anyway. And that was because you're not allowed to make the defenses that you want to make, and the prosecutors are allowed basically to make whatever arguments they want to make. It's crazy, though, instead of saying, look, Aria broke this jaywalking law, instead they had this argument that, okay, well, if you're wearing baggy pants and a tank top and you're listening to earbuds, then you're jaywalking. Therefore, Aria was wearing baggy pants and a tank top and had earbuds. Therefore, you must find Aria guilty. Okay, but the actual law against jaywalking doesn't say any of that.
Right.
And that's the situation we were in, where the actual law against money transmission businesses being unlicensed didn't say any of that. But we were found guilty because the actions that we allegedly committed were enough for the prosecutors to say, well, yeah, you have to find them guilty because they committed these actions. Right. But the actions that were committed by your own admission do not seem to have actually violated this law. But guilty verdicts all across the board.
Yeah, that's one of the things that is just absolutely wild when you see real trials happen is that they lie to the jurors.
Yes.
The prosecution lies. The judge lies. Like, you have to find these things. This is what you're judging on. No, that's not true at all. You are actually determining whether this was an evil action. That's what you were actually supposed to be there as a jury to do, is go, well, this doesn't seem evil to me at all. So you're fine.
That would be the way to go about it. But of course, we were prohibited early on from making any sort of jury nullification arguments. We filed the letter that was written by the attorney Seth Hipple, arguing that what the Shire Free Church was doing, and by extension later, the Reformed Satanic Church was doing the same thing, actually not really affiliated with the Shire Free Church, but it's a mess. And anyway, we had that letter from Seth Hipple, and the prosecutors objected to it on the grounds that, well, this invites jury nullification arguments. And we're like, well, yeah, duh. Have you met us? That's the argument here. But
you can't inform these people as to their rights as citizens.
And
they might want to control the government, and that's our job.
And in that particular situation, right, it would be a case of, yes, we broke the law, but you shouldn't find us guilty. That would affect, but because of the motion to dismiss, they weren't even allowed to say that we broke the law. All they could do is say they committed these actions, therefore guilty. Okay, right, but no law was actually broken, right? So a complete mess. Like, if there was a law that was broken, please point to the law on the books that we are alleged to have violated. And they weren't allowed to do that because no such law existed. That, to me, shows how screwed up the federal injustice system really is. And they got away with it. Not only did they get away with it, but like the judge was the one who made this ruling. Like, okay, we're going to allow this, but you can't mention the actual law. Why aren't you just dismissing the charge then?
Right? Wouldn't that be nice?
That would have been great. And at that point, I would have taken it as a trial because I was also charged with 4 counts of money laundering and 3 counts of wire fraud at that point. Or it was the other way around. It didn't matter. But you could tell by looking at the...
And one of those might actually be a crime.
It might be, if I had been guilty of any of it. But if you looked at the actual indictment, they got the basic facts wrong, right? Like on one day, they accused me of wire fraud in the amount of $72,000. And when I looked through the discovery on that day, what I found was a wire transfer in the amount of $27,000. Well, we're judging here on the facts,
right?
Not anything else. You accused me of wire fraud for $72,000. Well, you're
I
clearly
didn't
mistaken.
even send that much money.
Right? You're clearly...
Yeah, I mean, what happened to the days when, like, okay, if the guy filled out your ticket wrong, they had to dismiss it because they screwed up.
Right.
Like, the idea of, oh, I don't know, the benefit of the doubt being in the people's favor?
They were sure that I was going to take a plea deal, so they didn't have the indictment ready for me. The superseding indictment that we got in April of 2022. But obviously, I was not going to take the plea deal at that point. They were offering me 1 year in prison if I took a plea deal on count 3, which was operating an unlicensed money transmitting business. And they said, if you don't do this, we're going to bring more charges against you. Can we talk briefly about what a gross miscarriage of justice that is? Like, okay, look, I'm not saying I'm guilty of these things, but if I'm guilty of these things, and the people who are your prosecutors believe I'm guilty of these things, in what world is it just for them to just say, we won't even charge you with these crimes you committed? Like, we know you killed all those people, but if you just confess guilt to this one, we'll let all of those others slide. That is such a perversion of justice. And there's not much justice to be found in the system in the first place, but that is just a flagrant violation of every principle of moral justice. But it gets worse than that, because in the restitution documents that the prosecutors filed, they requested $800,000 in restitution from one HJ. Well, I know HJ. HJ was my customer. Never had any interaction with Ian Freeman whatsoever. So I wrote a letter to Ian's attorney to this regard, trying to get it filed, because I'm not going to let my friend get hung up and have to pay $800,000 in restitution. He never even spoke. He didn't even know the guy's name.
Right.
But the prosecutors wanted to pin it on him. And that's a grievous miscarriage of justice. You can't make an innocent person pay for the crimes of the guilty, and you can't make one person pay for the crimes of another. Like, if HJ was a victim here, then you should have had me pay restitution, but you didn't. In fact, you said no. There were no victims in Aria's case. They're on the record in the federal courtroom saying that. But then suddenly here's one of my customers, well, oh, everyone else is cashing in. I guess I'm going to do it too. I don't know what happened with that. Well, actually, I do know what happened with that. Ian ended up forfeiting the Bitcoin and gold and other assets that were seized on the day of the raid. And in return, the prosecutors agreed to use it to settle his restitution and not to seek monetary damages against him. This was another factor that led me to finally accept a plea deal, because if you get found guilty, even if you get found not guilty, they can still sue you for damages. And prosecutors love doing this.
Right.
So they probably would have sued Ian for tens of millions of dollars if this deal hadn't been worked out regarding the restitution.
We don't have double jeopardy, except that we can, even if we fail to get you put in jail for this, we can come back and sue you and say, well, can you prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that you didn't do this?
Well,
otherwise, you owe us enough money. Oh, and wouldn't you know, if you can't pay them the money that they say you owe them, then you get put in jail.
In civil, it's not even a matter of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a matter of it's preponderance of the evidence.
Right.
If they can reasonably conclude based on a preponderance of the evidence, so the bar is much lower.
Yeah, they don't have
courts.
to prove that you did it. You have to prove that you didn't do it. That's how that's how civil matters work.
Right.
Which is just, I mean, for the state to use that is just so absurd. Like that, the reason that we had that is because this is when people deal with people.
Yep, but that's how they pilloried Library and Jeremy Kauffman, of course, over the last several years. The SEC did that. Gary Gensler. There's some news about Gary Gensler. I don't know exactly what it is, but something. I'm hoping he's going to be replaced, because before I went to prison, it seemed like there were a lot of talking heads who were very upset with him. and the tyrannical way that he was leading the SEC.
Oh, yeah.
And just chasing after things that the SEC clearly had no jurisdiction to go after.
Yeah, that is one thing that I'm actually very pleased to see, is that this has become a political issue.
It has.
That like, okay, well, I'm first of that. Okay, you should vote Republican because I will protect your Bitcoin. And it's like, oh, okay, better than the other choice. The other choice was both of you being against us.
You're alluding to the fact that Donald Trump has come out as pro-cryptocurrency, I'm assuming, and you can actually donate cryptocurrency to the Trump campaign. Now, I have to stress again, do not give Donald Trump your cryptocurrency. Don't give him your money anyway. But it is a good sign for the cryptocurrency world that we have a mainstream presidential candidate willing to accept cryptocurrency
both
in
of them
donations.
now.
Oh, Biden as well?
Yeah, so
definitely don't give Biden your cryptocurrency.
Right,
well,
that is the worst idea.
I mean, don't give it to Trump either, though. I emphasize definitely.
I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm saying it's not the worst idea, whereas giving your crypto to Biden is literally the worst idea.
I mean, he is in charge of the executive branch that has been going after cryptocurrency for the last 4 years.
Yeah, no, if he, it blows my mind that he's like doing this sort of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, like, oh, well, you can give me cryptocurrency too. I'm not going to promise anything for it. Like, you literally could free Ross.
Right.
Like, if you want to shift the libertarian vote from the guy who just promised to free Ross, just do it.
That's been my argument for a few weeks now. Like Trump has a lot of momentum now, especially from libertarians like myself, who are going to vote for him simply for that one promise and just hope that he keeps it.
Well, and he can't, though. So that's the thing. Like, he can't actually do a full-throated support of cryptocurrency because it completely undermines the communist system.
I'm referring to Ross Ulbricht, though. Like Donald Trump being pro-crypto, that's great. But it's Ross Ulbricht. That's the basis of my vote. He's promised to commute Ross Ulbricht's sentence, and he can do that.
Right.
And he has promised to do so. And he did that in order to win over a bunch of libertarians. And as one of said libertarians, it helps that he also did not start any wars while he was in office.
Right.
That makes it easier on my conscience. To his credit, Poopy Pants Biden has also not started any new wars. So that is something.
That is something.
Yes. For almost 8 years now.
I mean, they keep flirting with World War III, and he did start a proxy war or two, but no actual new official wars.
Right.
With the boots on the ground.
So it makes it easier for me to vote for Trump in that particular scenario, knowing that he's not but he also did end the war in Afghanistan. He executed a full withdrawal. Yes, it was chaotic. No, I don't really. It was.
Yeah, funny how they only pay attention to the chaos when it suits their political agenda to do so.
Very much so, and it was always going to be chaos. There was no good way to move the troops out of Afghanistan without causing chaos.
Right.
By going in and taking over, the United States created a power vacuum. And when they pulled out, that was going to get rid of that. I mean, it was going to reinstate that vacuum, which, of course, the Taliban or Al-Qaeda, whoever they were, I don't remember now, and it doesn't really matter, they realized all they had to do was wait out the United States. And then they got if you wanted to transfer a large amount of guns and helicopters and missiles and stuff to Al-Qaeda without making the American people angry, you could not have done a better job than the war in Afghanistan.
And that's exactly what they did and how they did it. Because can you imagine what would happen if they ran out of terrorists to fight? Like, they might have to reduce military spending. And how are they supposed to pay off all of their political donors if they do that?
Yeah. But to his credit, Trump did not start any new wars, and he did end the one in Afghanistan, and he continued drawing down troops in Iraq, I think, but the United States is clearly always going to have troops there. So.
I mean, if we're going to mention that, we should mention the other side, that he did ramp up all of the wars we were in, and massively increased drone strikes, and got them to stop counting the civilian deaths. That is a pretty dictatorial move. We're just not going to count our failure anymore.
I certainly don't mean to suggest that Donald Trump is a peace candidate by any means. So thank you for.
Well, but between the two, he is. I mean, it's terrible, but this is our peace option.
But there's three candidates. The other being Chase Oliver, and the only thing I know about him is that one, apparently he's gay or bi or something, and two, he might have brainworms. I don't know. All I've seen is we have a senile dementia patient who doesn't know where he is, a convicted felon, and a guy with brainworms. So by process of elimination, I'm assuming Chase Oliver's the one who's accused of having brainworms, whatever those are and whatever they do, right? But I don't know anything. Why does the Libertarian Party, with all due respect to Chase Oliver and Joe Jorgensen, why does the Libertarian Party... Are they just drawing names out of a hat to pick presidential candidates at this point? Do we really not have a bigger name to run for president than Joe Jorgensen and Chase Oliver?
Well, so it's a few things, right? So one of them is just all of the political nonsense games that get played in the background of, oh, I'll do this for you, well, I'll do this for you, you should back me this and give me your delegates. Yeah. And that is not an effective process at getting someone who's competent.
That's
so
a
there's
good point.
that. Also, now this is a little bit tinfoil hat, I'll admit, but there is the possibility that they selected someone who's terrible on purpose.
In order to not take away from Donald Trump.
Right.
I would not be terribly surprised if that was the case. But Joe Jorgensen, she ran an okay campaign. She didn't make any missteps or anything, but she had fewer Twitter followers at the start of her campaign than I do. And I don't have the support to run for president. Why are we picking these people?
Right.
It's peculiar to me. I understand we can't get Ron Paul and we need an actual libertarian, but how about Jeremy Kauffman?
I mean, you would need someone who is extremely libertarian.
Right.
Because, look,
Jeremy Kauffman.
They're not going to actually become the president. Let's just go ahead and get that out of our heads from the get-go. If we got 10%, we would be extremely pleased and kind of shocked. And we do have plans for that. But in the meantime, if you're going to run someone for president, just accept that he's not going to be the president of the United States. So what are you doing? Messaging. So if you're messaging, then you should get the person who can best articulate being a libertarian to be that figurehead.
Yeah, I stopped caring about national politics around the same time that I moved to New Hampshire. The two things are related. Here in New Hampshire, we're actually doing things and getting libertarians elected, on a regular basis.
Right.
So...
I mean, it's wild, but we are literally shrinking the state government.
We are. And
I wasn't optimistic enough to think that was possible. I figured we could just slow it down enough to be an advantage.
We got an actual bill in the House of Representatives that would have potentially allowed the state of New Hampshire to secede from the United States government. Texas has been trying to do this for a long time.
Oh, so this year they might actually get it on the ballot.
Right, this year they have an automatic breakup thing. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but if the U.S. national debt hits, I think, $50 trillion, it may be $40 trillion, then it automatically triggers secession from the United States.
Oh, is that... No, we tried to pass that one here. It didn't go anywhere. But it's okay, what are they going to do? Stop spending money? Slow down their expenditures? Make the size of government stop increasing? I don't think so.
So the one I was talking about was last year, and that's already been shot down?
Oh, here? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now,
I was in prison when all of this happened. Not all of it, but
in Texas, they have more than the number of signatures, and they've got all their ducks in a row, and they filled out all the paperwork, and it's just a question of exactly how corrupt is the Republican Party in that state right now. If they are sufficiently corrupt that they're okay, well, you did all the things, but we're not going to do it anyway, then it won't be on the ballot. But if it is, there is a really good chance that they will just vote themselves out of the union. Because they are really upset right now.
They are, but I mean, most people are. Everyone is upset right now. And that's one of the reasons that I advocate for people to turn off your phones, turn off your televisions, go outside and meet your neighbors. And I find myself saying that more and more these days because I underestimated how toxic all of this garbage really is. But for 11 months in federal prison, I consumed no politics, no news, no religious arguments, no social media. And it was a very serene and peaceful time of my life in that regard. And I feel like if most people experienced that, they would come out on the other side and be like, you know what? This television I have, that does belong in the dumpster. This phone that I have that I'm scrolling Twitter, I've scrolled Twitter a few times since. So when I got out to the halfway house, I got ahead of myself. My roommate there watched Fox News all the time, from 7 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. And they are the worst, man. And it frustrates me that I'm not allowed to say that without, people on the left or people on the right going, well, what about MSNBC, they're not even better. Look, dude, they're all equally bad here, right? It's a race to the bottom, and they're all winning.
Right.
So when I say Fox News is the worst, I mean they're all the worst. CNN, they're terrible. Don't watch them. And all they did was spew divisive nonsense all day long. The next day, I got my phone back, which did at least allow me to put in earbuds and not listening to this garbage from Fox News all day. But I made the mistake of going onto Twitter and seeing what people were talking about. And
always a mistake.
It was just libertarians arguing with one another and being hostile to one another.
You have to all do the idea that I think will get us there. No, you have to all do the idea that I think will get us there. It's like, guys, do you not get what we're doing at all? Even if you're right, like, let's assume whatever idea this libertarian thinks is the right way to do it, let's assume hypothetically that is actually the right way to do it. They will stop us if we all do that. Yeah. The thing is, we're doing all of these simultaneously, and you can't block everything. It's basically the same thing that happened with the legal system, because if you stop this bad law from getting passed, in the time that you did that, this 5 laws that were terrible also got passed.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. And what made me so sad about it was that Fox News is selling hate and division to people, and people are buying. But on social media, they're selling it to each other, and they're all buying each. Like you don't have to argue with people online. You don't have to be toxic online, guys.
Right.
You can be nice and friendly. The internet is exactly what you make it. And when you go on Twitter and you get into arguments and online fights with people, you're just making it this toxic, miserable cesspool that no one should be on.
Right.
Excuse me, it's X now because a spoiled billionaire man. It is Twitter. But the spoiled billionaire man-child welfare whore has decided to call it X for some reason. I
think it's because he literally wanted to finally use the domain name that he has been holding on to for decades of X.com. He's like, well, I'm probably going to turn this into a financial app. And the original purpose of X.com was to be a financial site, so I may as well just do it now.
Twitter is not the vehicle that I trust with my finances.
No.
I say this as someone who has been banned, a lifetime ban, from Cash App, Google Pay, Venmo, PayPal, and several others.
Impressive.
Thank you. For a while, it was rather impressive. Out of all of those, the one I would trust most, I think, would be Cash App. Because they do actually sell you Bitcoin, whereas PayPal pretends to, but they don't allow you to withdraw it from the PayPal network. So there's no actual proof that it's Bitcoin that you're buying versus just a number on a spreadsheet.
Yeah, and they launched their own stablecoin now.
Did they?
Yeah.
Because the 35,000 that already existed just weren't enough?
Right. Well, they wanted to be able to print dollars.
And now they can. There is more coming up here from the Porcupine Freedom Festival, so stay tuned. We are at RV46 if you want to come down and hang out with us. It is Free Talk Live.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
Eleutheromania, the insatiable desire for freedom. It's the new 3-song heavy metal EP from Captain Kickass. Available now on your favorite music app or get it directly from CaptainKickass.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the latest episode of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From a feature story news in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has disbanded his war cabinet. It was set up in the wake of the October 7th attack by Hamas, which sparked a deadly conflict in Gaza. But opposition leader Benny Gantz quit the cabinet, citing a lack of strategy for the ongoing war. Sarah Coates is our correspondent in Israel.
Now, this was widely expected after the departure of Benny Gantz and also the former military chief of staff Gadi Eisenkot, who held an observer role on the war cabinet. They joined after October 7 to stop the far right from making key decisions on war efforts and also to show unity. Now, the far right elements of the government, specifically the National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir and the Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, they have been pushing for a spot on this very limited war cabinet, and this is really being now seen as a move, as a way of preventing this from happening, which could further strain relations with international partners.
Meanwhile, Israel has begun daily tactical pauses to allow for humanitarian aid deliveries into Gaza. The United Nations aid agency, UNRWA, has welcomed the move but says there are still some logistical issues to move the aid to affected areas. Jody Jacobs reports from the UN headquarters in New York.
As of Monday, trucks carrying humanitarian aid were allowed to safely cross into Gaza via the Karim Shalom crossing. For now, this will be the only border crossing that will be used for aid deliveries as part of these daily tactical pauses in fighting along the main roads into Gaza. UNRWA, the UN's aid organization in Gaza, says it hopes that Hamas will respect the decision.
Russian President Vladimir Putin will travel to North Korea on Tuesday. Kim Jong-un visited Russia last year. The two strongmen leaders have a closening relationship, assisting each other's countries with military goals. On Monday, NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg met with US President Joe Biden at the White House. It comes after nearly 80 countries convened in Switzerland for a summit aimed at agreeing a peace deal for Ukraine, though Russia was not invited and China did not attend. South Africa's former president Jacob Zuma says his political party, MK, will join the opposition alliance in parliament following last month's elections. Their vote was won by President Cyril Ramaphosa's African National Congress, but it lost its outright majority for the first time since the end of apartheid. And
Je pense qu'on est une génération qui peut faire la différence.
The captain of France's national football team, Kylian Mbappe, is calling upon young people to vote in the upcoming French election, warning that extremists are at the gates of power. His timely intervention during the European Championship follows French President Emmanuel Macron's decision to call a snap parliamentary election, on the heels of a big victory for his rival Marine Le Pen's right-wing national rally in European contests. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, a look at Vladimir Putin's offer of peace talks with Ukraine. The Russian leader said on Friday that he would be willing to negotiate with President Volodymyr Zelensky, but only under certain conditions. Military analyst and former Air Vice Marshal Sean Bell says the Russian leader's proposals are a non-starter.
All he's said is if Ukrainian forces withdraw out of those 4 occupied regions, they're occupied by Russia, and says that Ukraine won't join NATO, then of course he'll call a ceasefire. And you go, the aims of Putin's invasion were almost certainly to try and seize the Donbass region and try and stop the expansion of NATO. So what is he actually saying here? Putin has been trying to capitalize on this window of opportunity when the West's weapons weren't flowing to Ukraine, really struggling to make any significant breakthrough. Now the momentum is being lost, and all of a sudden it's looking a bit less rosy for Russia on the battlefields.
At the weekend summit in Switzerland, designed to breathe life into Ukraine's separate proposals for peace talks, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen described the Kremlin's gambit it as a non-starter. She said it was a recipe for future wars of aggression. Russia was not invited to the gathering in Switzerland over the weekend, and Chinese officials didn't show up. But the Ukrainians claim the weekend talks were a fresh show of support for their efforts to push back against Russian aggression. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our top stories again. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has disbanded his war cabinet. It was set up in the wake of the October 7th attack by Hamas. Meanwhile, Israel's begun daily tactical pauses to allow for humanitarian aid deliveries into Gaza. On Monday, NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg sat down with US President Joe Biden at the White House. And on Tuesday, Russian President Vladimir Putin will travel to North Korea. That's the latest feature story news. I'm Benji Haya in Washington.
In what medical authorities are calling one of the worst ointment complications in White Plains Hospital's history, area girlfriend Caroline Nagler was rushed to the ER this week after suffering an extreme overdose of scented lotion. With a blood lotion level of 0.45, hospital sources confirmed that Nagler had rubbed onto her body 4 times the lethal limit of shea butter, green tea cleanses, and naturally soothing mineral therapies.
Even putting aside the sheer level of lotion Miss Nagler had on her person when she arrived at the ER, this was an especially lethal combination she was using. She was mixing scented moisturizers, age-defying serums, and even some harder stuff like jojoba and essential fruit extracts. Frankly, she's lucky to be alive.
In other news, Beijing's air solidifies. A Delta Airlines counteragent assures a man he will never see his family again. And a mannequin must think he's some pretty hot shit. They say if you love something, let it go. But how could we possibly leave you behind after being blessed with a relationship as unique and complex as this one? For more, keep checking theonion.com.
This is the Onion News Network.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, day 1 from the Porcupine Freedom Festival here in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. And as always, you are invited to come down here and hang out with us. We're at RV 46, by the way. And it is a beautiful day here. Unfortunately, it may be the last truly beautiful day we get. Like, I think tomorrow's going to be beautiful as well. And you certainly don't let this discourage you from coming here. But it's going to be really, really hot, so bring some bottles of water when you come. Just go ahead and stop wherever is convenient for you. Pick up a case of water. Don't die is what I'm ultimately getting at. I meant to buy a case of water actually and throw it on this table over here, but we've gotten a better idea for using that table. I'm going to do both, honestly, and I'm going to put a sign up that says, take a bottle, it's free, just don't die, because it's going to be 94 degrees this week, and like people die at festivals by not drinking enough water. So I'm joined here now by...
I'm Matt Barney.
And you were talking to me a minute ago about a book, and I was like, wait, do you want to just talk about this on the air? So tell me about this book. What was the title again?
The title is Growing Liberty. I donated it to the Free State Project, and the goal was not only to recruit more porcupines to New Hampshire, but to help those of you that have been here for years stay more successfully. I've been a participant since before the vote of New Hampshire. I'm only moving now, and I'm an industrial organizational psychologist. So while most Liberty people know a lot about philosophy and economics and maybe political science, most don't know much about psychology, and yet it has a place in freedom.
That's a really good point. And I've noticed as well, now you're referring to the Free State Project vote, I assume, 20-ish years ago when they first picked between like 3 main states. I think it was Alaska, Montana, and New Hampshire.
Well, Wyoming was number 2. I voted at number 1. I'm delighted that other people had more wisdom than me, because I in hindsight, I'm glad New Hampshire was the choice.
I was not part of the Free State. I was still in school then. I was a kid.
I'm old.
But well, you don't look that old. You probably Mark Edge's age, and he's not old. But anyway, I'm glad they picked New Hampshire as well, because I moved to New Hampshire about 6 years ago, I think it was at this
remember.
point.
I've been a long time Free Talk Live listener since before they moved to New Hampshire from Florida.
Back when they were in Sarasota doing the show, back when it all started. But I fell in love with New Hampshire the first time I came to the Porcupine Freedom Festival. I was like, this is great. This is the first time I felt like safe and welcome everywhere I went. And obviously, the whole state of New Hampshire is not Porcfest. So people need to keep that in mind. You're not going to wander down the streets of Manchester on shrooms and LSD and stuff like you probably will here at Porcfest. But the vibe overall is very similar because New Hampshire is a very live free and die kind of state. So it was a really good choice for the Free State Project. It's been unfortunate for me, though, because I know it's been a long-running issue of libertarians moving to New Hampshire and then moving away from New Hampshire. And everyone has their reasons, but how can we put a stop to that? How can we... we have no problem attracting people here, clearly, but we do seem to struggle with keeping libertarians here. The Paxtons left, and that was a huge loss to the liberty community here. They ran the Porcupine Freedom Festival the first one I came to. They were the organizers. They were on the Free State Project board. And now they've relocated, I believe, to Tennessee with no immediate plans to return, as far as I'm aware. I actually haven't talked to Roger Paxton since I was released from prison. But it's sad to lose all of these. Ademo is another one, a huge cop block advocate. I believe he started cop block.
Right.
And he left. I think he's living in the Marianas Islands now. It's just sad to lose all these heavy lifters.
A past president of the Free State Project, Amanda Phillips.
Yeah.
I remember she left to go to Harvard Law. She's still there, and she doesn't. Yeah. So, and she has even less excuse because it's so close.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the goal of the book was, how do people find out what they love to do? Because that's part of free to choose, but what if you don't even know what options are available to you? And there's a lot of science about what people love to do, how I could find out things I might not even realize I like to do with different kinds of assessments.
That's a really fascinating topic, especially for me, because I've struggled with most of my life to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I knew what I did not want to do, right? I didn't want to get stuck working a boring 9-to-5 and living paycheck to paycheck, as 60% of Americans do. But not knowing what I did not want to do doesn't really put me any closer to knowing what I did want to do. And I don't think I've ever really figured that out. I just ended up doing this podcasting and this video thing, and I'm like, hey, this is actually pretty fun. I like this, but I'm not sure that I would have chosen this as the path for me. So it's a difficult subject for me, but it's one that endlessly fascinates me because I suspect most people don't really know what they want.
Right. And you might have a personal, you've got a lovely dog. There's like the kind of personal, and then there's the stuff that keeps us in New Hampshire because we can make a living doing it. I'm a serial entrepreneur as well. I work with artificial intelligence. That's what I was advertising on Free Talk Live in 2014 about, but not everyone has the skills of how do I either create job skills if I don't want to be an entrepreneur, or how do I create a business? And those are very, they're ways that science can tell us how to do it. So that's within ourselves. The second half of the book is all about changing the situation around us, starting with being able to be more persuasive. There's immense science around ethically influencing people. You could see where that works with the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, with regular activism, agorism, customer. The ultimate is moving to New Hampshire. But part of my goal with the book is to encourage people to think about how and what freedoms they want, sometimes turning that into money so they can make a living. I think some of the people, at least some of the entrepreneurs, couldn't find a way to make the product market fit work in New Hampshire. So this book is not a panacea, but it's a beginning to helping them think in a better way to keep them here.
Right, and I wouldn't expect it to be a all-around problem solver, right? The part of the core of libertarianism is, hey, it's your problem. You have to solve it yourself. And we won't keep you from acquiring the tools that you need to solve that problem, but ultimately it's your problem, your tools, it's your monkey, your circus, figure it out.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the appeals for a lot of people to the libertarian cause. So in your experience, what is the number one thing we could do? I mean, can we even influence this, or is this something that the individual themselves can do and only do to keep themselves in New Hampshire? Like, is there something that we as libertarians in New Hampshire could do to further influence these people who might move away to actually stay here within the state?
Sure. So I think it's important to point out sometimes people leave for purely personal reasons that have nothing to do with a challenge of being in New Hampshire, dying relative or something like that, or wanting to be near grandkids who are in another country or something like this. But for the rest of us, I think a lot of it, keep me honest, because you've lived here a long time. My impression is a healthy number of them can't make a living and end up leaving for work-related reasons. Is that a fair guess?
I'm not sure. I think a fair number of them do expect activism to make them money.
Okay.
And they expect to just come here and be activists and receive large amounts of donations for activism. I've had a few libertarians tell me, oh, yeah, I'll do this thing. Are you going to pay me to do it? I'm like, no, dude, it's activism, right? You do it because it's something that you love. And they're like, well, if I'm not making money, I'm not going to do it. Well, activism doesn't make money. And if it does, you go to federal prison.
Yep.
Ask me how I know.
I hear you.
So I suspect that plays a role in it, but it could also just... A lot of the ones I know ended up moving away because, I hate to say this, but because women were involved. Like Daryl Perry, great example. The Fed, almost certainly a Fed at this point. Like Jackie Perry came along a few years prior to the raid, and she took away the person who was Ian's number 2 at that time.
Yep.
Right? Like, and he wasn't involved in any cryptocurrency sales or anything. He was completely unrelated to that. He was just trained to do Free Talk Live. And if something happened to Ian, Daryl Perry would have been the one to pick it up. Well, here came Jackie Perry, and just a few years prior to the raid, she takes Daryl away from Ian and Free Talk Live, and the next thing you know, he moves to Washington State or some nonsense like that, and then we get raided, and neither Ian nor myself are there to do anything about it, leaving other people to pick it up. But that aside, I think something similar happened with a few others. Ian would know their names and remember their names. He has a better recall of that sort of thing than I do. But relationships do seem to play a heavy factor in my experience. And I don't suspect too many people come here and they get lonely, but they do insist on only dating other libertarians, which severely narrows your pool.
Although you got a better shot in New Hampshire than pretty much any other state in the U.S., at least.
In New Hampshire's probably the only state where you even have a shot, where like there's a decent chance the person that you're talking to is a libertarian, or at least liberty-leaning.
Yeah.
And if you met them here at the Porcupine Freedom Festival or whatever, then it's a given that they're liberty-leaning.
Well, let's talk about helping people today at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. There are 3 parts to relationship cultivation in the psychological science by a professor called Robert Cialdini, who I talk about in the book. One is about proactively investing in others. So if I give you something that you find personally significant, unexpected, pleasantly surprising, you're more likely to reciprocate. And that's a way, even Hayek talked about this, and before people could speak each other's languages, way you build relationship with strangers through reciprocity. The second one is liking. We all prefer to hang out with and date people that we like, and so elevating to the surface things we have in common, cooperating. Honest praise activates both liking and reciprocity. And then the last principle is called unity, using inclusive language like all of us liberty lovers. Not everybody wants to use the L word, capital or lowercase. Not everybody calls himself volunteer. But everybody here is pretty much going to be down with freedom in some capacity. So by getting good, these are deceptively simple because there's ways to activate and amplify them. But we libertarians could be a lot better, I would say, especially on reciprocity, because most of us don't know. The non-aggression principle is much deeper with that side of ethics, and we're generally good with that. We're terrible on the positive side of reciprocity.
I agree with that entirely, because a lot of libertarians, not a lot, but many libertarians seem to assume that the non-aggression principle is a moral code that they should follow, and if it doesn't violate the NAP, then that's all they care about. But I'm like, okay, yes, it does not violate the NAP if you walk past this child who's about to get hit by this truck. However, it is still immoral to just stand there and watch it happen. And that's because the non-aggression principle, of course, is not a moral code. And we need to go above and beyond that to actually help one another and assist one another.
Cialdini offers a framework that complements what you just said. So his approach, if you think about the libertarian ethics around fraud, he approaches it as if somebody knows they're being deceptive or they contrive it, it's unnatural, it's exaggerated, that's a kind of deception, it's a kind of fraud. And the last part of his ethics is about wisdom. So step back from the situation. Is the other person going to feel burned? Why would we want to work with that person? So what I like about reciprocity, and it's not just Cialdini, Lawrence Becker suggests that it predates Hoppian argumentation ethics, because we see it in other species. Ants, wolves, other primates have reciprocity. They have a proto-property right idea about negative reciprocity. We're more social than them, so we have to do more on the relationship building part before they even have the capability of arguing. So you can see where that ethical part, I work with AI to measure these things. I'm talking about it tomorrow here at Porcfest.
What time is that, by the way?
3:00.
Okay, because that's great, because I really want to hear this, because I'm finding you to be a very excellent and engaging speaker with with a lot of valuable stuff to say. Do you have any books on these topics to recommend, aside from the one that you've already recommended, whose name I've already forgotten, but that's fine because I can re-listen to this later. But do you have any other books to dive more deeply into these subjects, the psychological basis of relationship building and just cultivating a positive mindset, rather?
Robert Cialdini is the single most cited expert in the area of ethical persuasion. He's my mentor. I've worked with him for many years. He's got a really great, easy-to-read book called Persuasion, Science and Practice, or Persuasion, Science of Influence. His newest book is called Persuasion. All of these get at ethical persuasion. The thing that's tricky about reading the book is it's not going to make you fully proficient. You got to kind of practice, just like speaking a foreign language or learning to swim. You got to practice these things, and it's not obvious. In the context of everything else you got going on in your life, it's tricky to get good at those things. But he's terrific. If you want some more about the ethics, Lawrence Becker's book, Reciprocity, I think is super valuable for libertarians who want to go deeper than just argumentation ethics or virtue ethics, kind of the classics, because it predates it historically. It's why is our species geared toward property rights in the first place? And it comes back to this reciprocity idea.
One of these struggles I had in prison was how calculated friendship and reciprocity really was, and it always made me uncomfortable. Like if I gave someone a candy bar that was worth $1.50, they would insist on paying me back something that cost exactly the same amount. And if I was even like, look, I don't care, just take the candy bar. I'm like, no, I'm going to repay it. This is $1.50, so I'm going to give you one of these and one of these. It's much too calculated in prison. But prison does it takes all of these human relationships we have on the outside, and it strips them to their bare bones, where you see how calculated these things really are, how much give and take there really is, and just it's a microcosm of society as a whole, but without any of these subtleties that make it more acceptable.
Yes. My youngest brother was adopted. He's been in jail for 23 years. I know, and he's serving a life sentence. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
But yeah, it's very frustrating to deal with. And it's good to be back on the outside here where it's not as calculated, where if I give someone a T-shirt or something like that, they don't immediately think, oh, I have to repay this as soon as I get my commissary next week, or I'm a bum, or whatever it was that people would think. Or if I do someone a favor, they're like, oh, well, now I don't want you to do me a favor because then I owe you a favor. It's like, no, I just want to be able to do people a favor without there being any sort of catch to it or obligation to it.
That's the beauty of reciprocity. There's many ways they could repay your kindness. And so if you're the first mover and you do your homework enough to know something about them that they would find personally meaningful, significant, something they don't expect, it's more likely to build their feeling that they want to reciprocate. And of course that can snowball in a good way to friendship.
Right.
And a place like Porcfest is ideal to do that with people who already share your values. So you already have something in common.
I like that. So just like look at the new mover on Facebook and see what kind of movies they watch or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we both watch horror movies.
That's part of
have
liking.
a conversation about that.
Yeah. Elevate to the surface what you've got in common. Even the most difficult relationships get better if you focus on something you honestly like about them and you praise them about it. Praise is a kind of activator for reciprocity and liking. It's got to be honest because people can tell if you're BSing them. But that's like even tough relationships where maybe you're never going to be friends. You could get along better if you're seeking out the best in others and making it known to them that you respect that about them.
That is tremendously helpful in general. And we are here on site, and we're about to watch two different cars going down the same narrow road. It's wonderful here at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. There's only one of them going the wrong way this time. But anyway, sorry to get distracted by that. I was curious to see how that was going to play out. Speaking of relationships there, though, like that was an opportunity for him to share valuable information, saying, hey, guy, you're going the wrong way and it's going to be a problem. These are all one ways. You have to go out this way because we've all agreed to this in order to prevent exactly from what just happened from happening. But instead, none of that interaction actually occurred. I suspect whatever they said to one another was relatively hostile. And that's something I see a lot on the internet as well. And that makes me think that this hostility we have toward one another on the internet is probably starting to spill out into real society.
Totally.
But when I scroll Twitter, all I see is libertarians arguing with one another. And they don't do this here at the Porcupine Freedom Festival, at least not as vehemently and viciously as they do online. And it's got to be bad for people to expose themselves to that level of vitriol, and maybe it's not hate, but it's so close to hate. It's that I might as well just call it hate.
And the root of that is this dark side of reciprocity. I mean, the non-aggression principle is the way it is because we're socially geared toward feeling bad if people hurt us or take our stuff. And then there's this retribution, which is evil and ugly for people. And so hence we would like to structure society to not have that kind of negative reciprocity. And I think we're generally good as liberty lovers at that side of it, but we could learn a lot about proactive investments in others and cultivating relationships. So we have less inclination and we're more wise about what arguments we choose to have online. So we're not going to have the conflict in real life.
I would love to see that. And the libertarian book that you mentioned, the one that talks about all of this at the very beginning.
I donated it to the Free State Project earlier this year. I will talk about it tomorrow at 2, just before my talk at 3.
This is a book that you wrote?
I wrote the book.
Okay,
I interviewed many different participants in the Free State Project, including Ian. Ian had in fact, I sent it to Ian before he went to jail, so make sure I tried my best to not misquote anyone, but I might have, because I didn't hear back from everyone. But every chapter has at least 2 porcupines showing how they are applying what the science would recommend, either figuring out what freedoms they love or how to grow those freedoms or influence around them, or move into New Hampshire, which is the ultimate at the last chapter. Jason Sorens wrote the intro. Carla wrote the post log to the book. I donated all proceeds to the Free State Project, and I think I have to check. I think at the registration desk is where they're selling it.
Okay, fantastic. I'm going to stop by and buy a copy then. And you're giving your presentation tomorrow at 3 o'clock. For anyone listening to this, you are invited to come down there and check it out. I think it's going to be great. I'm going to arrange to not have... But tomorrow is Tuesday, so I actually don't have to do the show anyway, so that'll work out really well. So that's 3 o'clock tomorrow at the Pavilion, and you're talking about...
I think it's Liberty 101.
Okay, sorry. So at the Liberty 101 tent, and that's down there by the Pavilion. It's impossible to miss. You'll see it. And you're going to be giving a presentation on these topics and the book?
With artificial intelligence. So I work at the intersection of psychology and technology. I've created AI to help people use those ethical persuasion principles, but the vision goes way beyond that because it's not unique to persuasion. I'm going to propose 2 different DAOs as additional ways to keep people in New Hampshire.
A DAO, by the way, for those who don't know, is a decentralized autonomous organization.
That's right. So putting the AI on the blockchain as a counterpart to the NSA surveillance, I'm providing a different kind where we could monitor New Hampshire people, praise them if they're doing good pro-liberty stuff, even if they're not a porcupine, but also catch the parasites in the act to expose them.
Like the people, what do you mean by parasites?
I mean the people that violate our rights, whether they're statists or what have you. It's tough to catch them in the act, but this AI is so precise that it can do that. I did it with many politicians, many senior leader types. They could be a parasite in a company or in the state, any of the above.
Okay, is this artificial intelligence, is it widely available? Like, how does it have an interface that the public can use to chat with it? Or, I mean, how does it...
Yeah, and I have a couple porcupines using it right now. It's called Cialdini Bot.
Nice, I like it.
But tomorrow I'm giving away some free prompts. So I've studied how to make the prompts correct, and I've engineered them specifically for Free State Project participants on all kinds of persuasion, from running for office to creating memes, so that you don't have to use my AI. You can use any AI. Mine just is a bit better and can do the measurement that the other AI can't do.
So what would be the purpose of this AI, like in a practical sense? Could be like, hey, can you tell me how Chris Sununu, who is the governor of New Hampshire, by the way, is on liberty? And it would be like, yeah, he sucks.
That would be a futuristic, so it could go way beyond what Freedom in the 50 States, what Jason Sorens does in a more labor-intensive and an older approach to it. It can do the same thing with every speech he ever gives. And one of the points I'll make tomorrow is it's not enough to measure them once. So, for example, I measured Sam Bankman-Fried. He wasn't lying all the time, but guess what? He was still north of Bill Clinton lying about Monica Lewinsky. And Bill Clinton wasn't lying all the time either when his pants weren't down. So but this is painless and it's pretty quick to measure these things just from digital exhaust. So I'm going to go into the case for AI to amplify freedom in New Hampshire. DAO is just a way to make sure we use the decentralized finance stuff to make it sustained and immutable.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for sitting in with us today and for enlightening me on so many of these subjects and giving me places where I can look to find out.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 13th through the 16th for the 8th annual Porcfest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Porcfest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which has sold out in recent years. Porcfest happens the weekend before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Porcfest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 13th through the 16th. You can find out more at the unofficial website, porcfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Porcfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Porcfest forum. You can find links to those at porcfest.party. We hope to see you there June 13th through the 16th. porcfest.party.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has disbanded his war cabinet. It was set up in the wake of the October 7th attack by Hamas, which sparked a deadly conflict in Gaza. But opposition leader Benny Gantz quit the cabinet, citing a lack of strategy for the ongoing war. Sarah Coates is our correspondent in Israel.
Now, this was widely expected after the departure of Benny Gantz and also the former military chief of staff Gadi Eisenkot, who held an observer role on the war cabinet. They joined after October 7 to stop the far right from making key decisions on war efforts and also to show unity. Now, the far right elements of the government, specifically the National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir and the Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, they have been pushing for a spot on this very limited war cabinet, and this is really being now seen as a move, as a way of preventing this from happening, which could further strain relations with international partners.
Meanwhile, Israel has begun daily tactical pauses to allow for humanitarian aid deliveries into Gaza. The United Nations aid agency, UNRWA, has welcomed the move but says there are still some logistical issues to move the aid to affected areas. Jody Jacobs reports from the UN headquarters in New York.
As of Monday, trucks carrying humanitarian aid were allowed to safely cross into Gaza via the Karim Shalom crossing. For now, this will be the only border crossing that will be used for aid deliveries as part of these daily tactical pauses in fighting along the main roads into Gaza. UNRWA, the UN's aid organization in Gaza, says it hopes that Hamas will respect the decision.
Russian President Vladimir Putin will travel to North Korea on Tuesday. Kim Jong-un visited Russia last year. The two strongmen leaders have a closening relationship, assisting each other's countries with military goals. On Monday, NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg met with US President Joe Biden at the White House. It comes after nearly 80 countries convened in Switzerland for a summit aimed at agreeing a peace deal for Ukraine, though Russia was not invited and China did not attend. South Africa's former president Jacob Zuma says his political party, MK, will join the opposition alliance in parliament following last month's elections. Their vote was won by President Cyril Ramaphosa's African National Congress, but it lost its outright majority for the first time since the end of apartheid. And
Je pense qu'on est une génération qui peut faire la différence.
The captain of France's national football team, Kylian Mbappe, is calling upon young people to vote in the upcoming French election, warning that extremists are at the gates of power. His timely intervention during the European Championship follows French President Emmanuel Macron's decision to call a snap parliamentary election, on the heels of a big victory for his rival Marine Le Pen's right-wing national rally in European contests. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. We are here on site in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire here at Rogers Campground. And Bonnie has finally arrived. I mean, I say finally, but
I didn't go to Porcfest.
Right. I mean, you had other priorities to deal with, and luckily you were there in the studio in order to do a live show because Saturday the wind here was gusting at like 20, 25 miles per hour. It broke this canopy behind us.
Oh my gosh. I'm thinking if that happens again, we could ask to use the media room because they did offer for us to use the media room to do like an event there, and I just ended up telling her, thank you for the offer, but it just kind of doesn't make sense to do the same thing we're doing here, but in a different place where we have to move everything. But if there's like a wind problem, that might be a good...
Well, as of yesterday, we can do one better than that because Free Talk Live apparently donated the mobile studio to the Porcupine Freedom Festival for this year. I was as shocked as you were with the face you just made.
I just didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't either. I learned yesterday. But the Porcupine Freedom Festival, after their speakers speak, they're going to go into our mobile studio and they're going to record a quick 5-minute interview.
Cool.
And that's it.
That's really cool.
It is. And I found out about this yesterday, and I was like, well, it's not set up for any of this, right? I mean,
Captain did it.
Well, it was not set up.
Oh.
Like, all of the stuff was in there because Ian had done it, right? So,
well, Captain worked on it and even, like, bought stuff, and the church reimbursed him and stuff during the time you were in prison. So,
Okay.
well, Ian also, like, set a bunch of stuff up.
Right. I knew that much. Regardless, it wasn't ready for production at that exact moment, and it wasn't going to be anytime soon. But luckily, you know, I was able to get it up and running relatively quickly. I think it took about 15 minutes because, as you pointed out, everything was already in there. It just wasn't connected to the right places and all of that sort of thing.
Cool.
But it's all set up now, and I sat down at it to do a test recording, and I was like, this is actually really convenient. This is a really good play. We should be doing Free Talk Live in this thing because we're going to get better audio quality. There's going to be less environmental noise because we're in an enclosed, insulated space. It's got an air conditioner in there, which is going to be extremely useful tomorrow and the next few days when it's 94 degrees. But it's already been promised to the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Now, granted, it does belong to Free Talk Live. So if I wanted to be like, hey, look, guys, I'm sorry about your presentations or your interviews that you wanted to do, but we're going to do our radio show in here, we could certainly do that. But I don't want to do that, and I think it would be better if we really want to use the mobile studio to just record the show at like 10 o'clock at night till midnight or something like that.
Yeah, time when they aren't using it.
Yeah, that way they can still use it because it buys us a lot of goodwill with them, right? Like, Free Talk Live provided them a really awesome thing this year, and that was really cool. I'm really glad it happened. I was a bit surprised that it happened, but it's here now, and it didn't take me very long to say. I was not happy to have additional work dumped on me after setting up the Free Talk Live site here. Like, I'm in the process of moving into an apartment and in the process of moving into a house simultaneously while I was also working my full-time job and preparing for Porcfest and the Porcupine Freedom Festival. And
all that stuff is like so much work, like that you just like don't even think about it until it's happening. Like, I was like, oh, I'll just pack everything for Porcfest and get there in the same day because I had too many other things to do like the days leading up to it, and oh my god, I was like 4 hours later than I thought I would be.
Yeah, that's how it goes. Luckily, I have sort of the same packing strategy each year for the Porcupine Freedom Festival or Porcfest that I do every single year, and that is on the Wednesday before, or the day before I leave. It was Wednesday this year. I wash all my laundry that I'm going to use, and I just take that laundry bag and I dump it into my suitcase. And then I zip it shut and I bring it.
Nice.
And then I have wrinkled clothing when I get here, but like, it's the Porcupine Freedom Festival. So we are obviously here on site at the Porcupine Freedom Festival, and of course I have a golden retriever who she doesn't bark, right? She's a really
I don't think
quiet
I've ever
dog.
heard her bark.
Yeah, but she does hear, and she does when she's chained up like she is right now, and it's solely because she thinks that barking at people will get their attention and make them come and pet her.
Nice, yeah.
And-
or not nice, but I know exactly what you mean. And also, she might be copying Coconut. Coconut always barks when he sees a dog. He sees a dog, barks, and he sounds like he's going to attack them or something, so it freaks people out when they don't like know dogs well enough, or especially like small dogs. And then as soon as they meet, he's fine. For some reason, he hates Azria, and he like it's not like he's gonna bite her or something, but I've tried to make him sniff her or something. He's like purposely turning his head away and pretending he doesn't see her. It's just like something happened because he met her when she was a puppy, and he just like decided from then that he hates her.
Well,
I think
she was a bit energetic back then.
And also, it was like she comes into the Moose Mart. She would come into the Moose Mart, and that was like his place. He
that's
thought.
true.
So
Well, it was. He was the president.
Never forgave that. Yeah.
The unfortunate thing about it, though, is that like Azria is really quiet until she wants someone to pet her, and then she barks at them and she charges at them, exactly how you mentioned. A lot of people think she's going to bite her, but even more frustratingly, most people know that she won't, and so they pet her. And the result of that is that she has learned that barking at people and charging at them gets her pets. And there's nothing I can do at this point to really fix that, except to tell these people, hey, no, don't pet her. I mean, she ran at you barking like a maniac. Like, don't pet the dog. But they always do. And here it's difficult anyway, because if she's not, like a minute ago, she was listening to me, and I had to tell someone who she knew really well, like, look, don't pet her right now. She's not listening. You're rewarding her for not listening. And when you have a dog, you have to be cognizant of these things, right? She's being bad, and you're petting her.
When I first got Coconut and my other dog Schnitzel, I got them like a month apart. I didn't know anything about having a dog. I didn't like grow up with a family pet dog or anything. Like one, and it didn't last very long. But anyways, I didn't know anything about training a dog. So basically, I was just always nice to him, because you think of it as like a human baby. Like, you just be nice to them all the time. And it's not like that you be mean to them, but being assertive is just really important with dogs, because their whole language is like, who's on top? Yeah. Who's in charge? And they're uncomfortable if they don't know. Because I was just like, Coconut, me and you are besties, basically. Like, we're equals. You're like a little human. And that was like making him really bad. But then when he met Ian, or when I met Ian, he like taught me all the like no free lunch stuff and like putting him in his place. And he's legitimately a better and happier dog because of it.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about dogs when I got her. I just knew I wanted a dog, and I had free time on my hands finding. So I was like, I'm going to get a dog. And a golden retriever seems like a good kind of dog for me to get. And luckily, by amazing coincidence, maybe the seed was planted in my head unconsciously, and I just wasn't aware of it. But a friend of mine happened to have golden retriever puppies. So I bought one from his mom did. So I bought one from her. And I immediately reached out to a trainer, because I know nothing about a dog. Like, I know how to make my cats do more or less what I want, and that's by over the years slowly training them to do what I want.
I don't know how you do that. Not that your cats are bad or anything like that, but cats in general, I've never gotten a cat to like do things I want, like in any way, shape, or form, basically.
Well, it's not that they really do what I want. It's more that they don't do what I don't want them to do, right? They know which counters they're not allowed to jump on. They know what they're not allowed to do. And they are really good about not doing those things, because consistently, like Dinner he loved climbing onto my laptop. And every single time he would, I would just gently pick him up and put him on the floor every single time. And this would happen for months.
And then you've tweeted, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, and eventually he would just stop walking on my laptop. And now whenever I'm sitting at my desk using my computer, he just sits here, he puts his little front paws on the desk with me, and he just sits with his butt in my lap, just chilling, being very good and not climbing all over the keyboard. It's very time consuming to train a cat what they are and aren't allowed to do. The dog was much easier, but it is a matter of just rewarding various behavior, right? Like, if she barks at you and you pet her, you are rewarding her for barking at you. And I don't want people to do that, but at the same time, I don't want people to walk away thinking, oh, Arya's dog is so unfriendly. She's not unfriendly. She's just stupid. And ever since she's been coming here, she's barked at people, and they've come and petted her as a result of that. So she thinks barking at people gets pets, and she's not wrong.
This is like really like at least like stimulating situation for them too, if not like stressful. It's definitely stressful for Coconut to be in cars. He hates it. So he was in a car for like almost 3 hours today, and then he's in an unfamiliar place. He loves the motels here. Every time we go into the motels, aww, I'm like, do you like it? And he jumps up on the bed and like turns around, looks at me, and he's like wagging his tail, and he's like, this is my bed. And he for no reason just loves the motel specifically here, and it's really funny. But he likes Porcfest too. He likes like walking around here, but he's like hyper vigilant, like looking for what he needs to bark at. So
Azria loves it here. Of course, that's because she's been coming here since I got her. I got her like 3 years ago on the Porcfest Eve, that Sunday night, right before I left for Porcfest.
Oh, yeah.
In 2021 was when I got Azria. And she didn't know who I was or anything. She was a happy dog that night. She slept a lot. She played a lot. She met all my friends and stuff. And then we came to Porcfest the next day. And she just... So she's been around loud noises.
She was so little. I kind of forget that.
She was so little and so fluffy.
I was going to say she was literally like a fluff ball, and her skin felt like it could be moved from like one end to the other, you know?
Yeah. She was
So
an
cute.
adorable little girl. And that night, I began training her on sit. If she wanted food, she had to sit. And it was tedious, and she didn't get it. She did eventually, and she's got sit mastered now.
Yeah.
I mean, she's really good at that. She can sit with the best of them, man. But that was 3 years ago, and so she's used to people and loud noises, ATVs, the four-wheelers, the golf carts, the loud music, the dogs barking at her.
There was
None
a
of that bothers
firecracker
her.
when I first got here.
Yeah.
I was like, where'd that come from?
But hey, so I just want to make everyone aware, though, like if your dog attacks other dogs, keep it on a leash. If your dog attacks mine again because your dog isn't on a leash, we might actually have a problem. That's inexcusable. It's irresponsible. And you should be responsible for yourself and your dogs.
Yeah.
I'm speaking of this one particular vendor last night who a friend of mine went to go buy something, and one of their dogs was on a leash, and she was totally cool. She just came up and started sniffing Azria, and Azria sniffed back, and then everything was fine. And then here comes this other little dog, not on a leash, and just starts barking at her, yipping at her, and biting her.
Whoa, that's not cool.
Yeah, I spilled the drink I had everywhere, all over Azria. She still got mad at fur because of it. And I'm like, why is your aggressive, hostile dog not on a leash?
What kind?
I don't know, some little dog. And this happened last year as well, where I was walking Azria, and this dog just charged out of a campsite. And luckily, I was prepared for it, so I picked up Azria completely. She's not a light dog. She's like 50 or 60 pounds at this point. And he said something to me, and I was like, man, your dog should be on a leash. Why isn't your dog on a leash? And he's like, just have a good day, Arya. No, like, this needs to be worked out, man.
Yeah, that's really crazy. Like, I would never have Coconut, like, off a leash. He's not, like, to be trusted like that. Like, he's never bit another dog, but he would definitely go up and start a fight with a dog if he didn't like it. Like, there are just some dogs he sees and he doesn't like them. Like, our neighbor across the street, I'm not going to say its name, it's a really cute dog name, and it's a pit bull, and it's a girl, and I'm not, like, super pro pit bull, to be honest, but it's, like, one of the best behaved dogs I've ever met, and really cute. It's, like, gray silver, super small for a pit bull, and just like super pretty, and just an extremely good dog. The Gordons watch it sometimes, so I've like met it.
Okay.
And every time, he can't be consoled if he sees it for no reason, and all it does is stand there like stone faced, like it doesn't care that he's barking at all. But for whatever reason, it's just like these animals are unpredictable is what I'm trying to say. Like, if he saw a dog he thought was that one or something, he might run off and do like at least barking and being mean, you know, like at the very least. But if your dog actually bites, that's so bad.
I could actually unleash Azria and just let her wander around, and I know she wouldn't get into any trouble. I mean, she wouldn't be aggressive toward any people or any dogs. However, she would jump into people's open vehicles to go into town with them. She would jump into their RVs. She would have no hesitation whatsoever. Like, we've tested this with random friends coming by my house at one point to go to the bar with us or whatever. I'd be like, hey, swing by my house and pick up my dog. And they would. And she would just jump right in the car with total strangers because she's like, oh, we're going for a car ride. So my biggest concern with her is not her behavior. It's that she's really lovable, she's really cute, and she's really friendly. And she would absolutely just jump in someone's RV and be like, all right, I live here now.
Yeah.
She did that with the Gordons just a few days ago. To be fair, she's been inside their RV before. So
she knows it.
Yeah, so she knows them. But she just walked right in like she owned the place. It's like, Azria, you can't do this, girl. If there's an open car anywhere nearby, she's going to jump into it and sit down in the passenger seat and be like, all right, when are we going? Let's go.
Coconut has the opposite problem where if I'm driving, all the windows have to be almost all the way up because he will jump out.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, he's done it. So
I drive a convertible, and there was one time when I thought Azria was going to jump out of the car while we were going down the highway. Definitely not over the speed limit, but we were going fast. And she got a bit frisky. Luckily, someone was holding her leash, so they were able to pull her down. But nothing like that has happened since, thankfully. But she does not hang her head out the window, like, or whatever you would call it. Yeah.
I wish Coconut could do it, but he literally can't be trusted.
he wants to of the moving vehicle. He wants to jump out. Well, she almost did that once, but I think she's just stupid. I don't think she did it on purpose. Like she is. Like she's dumb.
He did it on purpose. He freaks out every time he gets in a car. He's like, I'm talking for like 3 hours.
Oh
like,
goodness.
He doesn't just stop at some point. It's crazy. Like I'm always thinking like it's gonna injure him to do that.
So there are a lot of dogs here, and there are at least 4 cats here this year, which is. You're welcome, cat lovers. I was the first person to start bringing cats to the Porcupine Freedom Festival.
But are they out like on a leash on the campgrounds, campsites? That would be cool.
Well, mine are just chilling in the hotel room.
Oh.
That's what they do. But the other 2 are kittens that are wandering. I assume, like really, that's kind of a jerk move to bring kittens to the Porcupine Freedom Festival with the intention of giving them away.
Oh.
Because some little kid is going to fall in love with that kitten and they're going to go to their mom and dad and be like, can I keep it? And they're just going to cry until the parent says yes. So, I mean, that's kind of a jerk move. That's like going to Walmart on a Saturday morning and be like, hey, kid, want to pet the kitten? Right? But hey, man, whatever works.
Hey, kid, okay. If they're not like doing that, like they're like not letting the kids pet it unless the parents say it's okay, stuff like that, then...
But I saw Molly
right.
Molly was just running around with one of these kittens in the little hood of her hoodie, and Kitty was super chill about it.
She's so good with animals as far as I've ever observed, because she grew up with like baby animals.
I learned
that's a really cool thing.
That when they had Osria when I was in prison, Molly would take Osria on walks through the mountains and stuff like all the time.
She's little.
Yeah, she is.
She's like 7?
I don't even know if she's that old, but she's a very little girl, and Osria's a big dog.
It would be hard for me to walk Osria, I think, because she's strong.
Osria doesn't really pull, and Molly would lay down the law and like yank the leash and like, no, you're not pulling.
That's
and she
awesome.
never took Bella, which is their dog, on these walks because Bella pulled too much.
See, I grew up kind of scared of dogs, like. I just couldn't have done that, so it's always like so impressive to me. Anytime I meet a little kid that's even just good with dogs, like will pet them and not hurt them, I'm always like saying to the parents like, that's really good, like you're doing a really good job raising them. Because when I was a little kid, if I saw any dog, I would just like walk the other way. I was just so afraid because, well, I'm literally like 100 pounds right now, so I've always been really small, and dogs, even like a chihuahua jumping on me, can literally hurt me, especially when I was like 5.
Right.
So.
Which is completely understandable. Luckily, I grew up around dogs and just cats in general, so I wasn't really too concerned about them.
I grew up with literally I've had 100 cats in my life.
Until I was doing IT work for this company, doing contract work, and I was sent to this realty company called Revit Realty out of Memphis, Tennessee. Yeah, I'm gonna name drop them because this was severely messed up behavior from them.
I wonder if they still exist.
I hope not. They don't deserve to, just because of the owner. But they let their dog wander around, and their dog bit me.
What kind?
I don't know. I don't remember now at this point. This was, probably a decade ago.
I've never been bit.
But the dog bit me, and I was like, hey, man, I'm here working, so can you put this dog away for the next hour or two? And they were like, yeah, we'll do that. Not 10 minutes later, this dog had me literally cornered in an office ready to bite me again.
Whoa.
And I was furious. I was like, dude, did you really let this dog that had already bit me once back out of your office so that it could bite me again?
Some people are just like crazy, like in the fact that like they act like they like the guy who told you like have a nice day, Arya. It's like, I know my dog, he's good. You don't speak dog. They're unpredictable. They're animals. That's probably what this person's doing. Like, oh, let him out. He won't do it again. It's so stupid.
Well, his employees had already washed blood off of my hands at this point because the dog broke the skin. Like, this was a bite. And for a few years after this, I was terrified of dogs. Even my sister's pit bull, who was the kindest and gentlest dog I've ever met. Just this big, fat, happy pit bull, right? Never hurt a fly. Very similar to Osria in that regard. But I was just scared of him because once something like that happens, it just affects you.
Yeah,
and this guy he called me later that day. He was like, I feel really bad about this. Let me buy you a video game or something. I was like, a video game? Dude, I have a legit lawsuit against you right now.
Yeah.
Like, this is literal textbook negligence. I could sue you and own your company, and you're offering to buy me a video game. He was like, well, yeah, that seems fair. I was like, you're not even apologizing.
Oh, my God. That's
like,
so dumb.
I don't want your stupid video game. And I just want an apology, and I want you to recognize that what you did was wrong and to not do it again to other people in the future. But no, I'm not coming back out there today to fix your IT. I'm not coming back out there in general, right? If you want your IT problems fixed now, you've got to hire someone else because I'm not going to do it. You let your dog bite me, and then you let your dog out to bite me again.
There's a prolific thing of people believing that everyone finds their dog or their child cute and lovable.
Yeah.
It's literally a huge thing. Like on Twitter, this lady was like, "Oh my God, my child at Disney World got away from me for a second." 1.5-year-old. And or like 2.5-year-old or something, and walked up to a stranger and was rifling through their bag. As soon as I saw her, I grabbed her and got her away. But the person had the nerve to say, "I don't find that wasn't cute at all." And it's just like cute. Because it's not cute. Yeah, it's literally, even if if it was like a kid it's kind of like bad behavior, and then it's like, okay, like it's not like the worst thing a kid could do, but like no, other people don't have to find your kid cute, and they're talking like, this is the problem with the world today, everybody hates kids. It's like, that's not what this is. It's just that you are entitled and you think that everyone has to have the same opinion of your kid that you do, and that's stupid.
And pets is the same way. Like I leave Osria's ball here at the Free Talk Live site because she loves to play with it. And it'd be the same thing if someone just let their dog come in and just take her ball. But hey, what are you doing?
My dog's so cute doing that.
Yeah, look at her with the ball. Hey.
And at the same time, these are the same subgroup of parents that will say like, I can't have an adopted kid. I have to have my own kid because you don't love a kid as much if it's not your own kid. So you'll say that's crazy. Maybe I can literally understand that it may be true, but it's not like if you're infertile, you're going to be like, yeah, I hate this adopted kid. You would love it too. It may be true that you wouldn't love it as much. Maybe I'm not an adopted parent or anything. Adoptive parent or whatever, but I'm just saying it's like so dumb. It's like if you're infertile and you've tried like everything, like it's just so dumb. People are like, no, I can't, you don't understand. No, it's narcissism. It's you think that there needs to be another you running around.
Yeah, the perpetuation of their genes is more important to them than the life and well-being of this other human being, right? If the life and well-being of this other human being was more important, then you would love them whether they were your own offspring or not.
Yeah, it's like, dear God, I hope none of those people are step-parents.
When I was married, my wife and I wanted to have one child and adopt one child because there's a lot of unadopted kids out there who need a good adult. And you have all these Christians who are anti-abortion who are just filling up, adoption centers with more and more kids, and no one's adopting them. So, and she hated that idea. She was like, no, we're not adopting. We're going to have 3 of our own kids. I was like, first of all, we're not having 3 of anything.
That is so messed up, honestly. It's
but second, I did ultimately convince her, but I don't understand the appeal. But I don't want to have kids anyway, so I don't have that drive to produce offspring that most people seem to, which is good because I can't produce offspring anymore anyway. But I don't have the drive to in the first place. I do too many other things that I think will perpetuate my time on this earth, right?
That's such a good point. People like to say well, you won't have any legacy. It's like, why don't you do something important then with your life?
Right. I ran for sheriff as on a platform of F the police, being a trans anarchist Satanist in New Hampshire. I feel, and being on Free Talk Live and being one of the Crypto Six, that's my legacy. I don't need a kid. I'm doing stuff myself, and I'm not going to have a child just because I'm a failure as a person and I'm not doing anything worthwhile or worth noting or worth remembering.
A lot of times, remembering and not remembering aside, a lot of times people will say, have a kid because that's the best thing you can do to further liberty by teaching them. Obviously, I believe that if you're having kids, it's important to homeschool them and teach them about libertarian ideals. But it's so messed up to say, I'm going to do no activism because my kid's going to do it all. That's what you were saying. Do some activism and have a kid. Just don't go overboard to get, arrested, So stupid.
It is very true as well to say that having a family is the death of activism. I've seen so many hardcore activists who they had a child and suddenly they have so much more to risk and they're not willing to risk it, which I understand.
Alu was at my pine tree flag thing with his baby.
The chance of arrest on that was very low.
Yeah.
And it's a bit skewed because in Keene we have a reputation for kind of hardcore activism that tends to lead to arrest. But we are here on site and there is more coming up here. Bonnie and I are going to get into a discussion about Alex Jones and why the hell.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
Free speech is protected on the internet, right? Not always. Government agencies try to limit free speech and commerce on the net. Luckily, when they do, the Institute for Justice is there to defend your First Amendment right to free speech. IJ helped set the first federal precedent for internet free speech in 1999, and ever since has worked to prevent unconstitutional roadblocks in cyberspace. Visit our website today at ij.org.
Imagine someone in your community getting in their car, turning on the radio, and hearing the Liberty Radio Network. You can make that vision a reality with your own micro radio station. Visit broadcast.lrn.fm to learn how you can put our programs on the air in your area. You can have LRN.FM running around the clock, and you can even add in your own local shows. Building a radio station is simple, but programming isn't. That's where LRN.FM comes in. Learn more at broadcast.lrn.fm. That's broadcast.lrn.fm. You're listening to the latest episode of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network, LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has disbanded his war cabinet. It was set up in the wake of the October 7th attack by Hamas, which sparked a deadly conflict in Gaza. But opposition leader Benny Gantz quit the cabinet, citing a lack of strategy for the ongoing war. Sarah Coates is our correspondent in Israel.
Now, this was widely expected after the departure of Benny Gantz and also the former military chief of staff Gary Eisenkot, who held an observer role on the war cabinet. They joined after October 7 to stop the far right from making key decisions on war efforts and also to show unity. Now, the far right elements of the government, specifically the National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir and the Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, they have been pushing for a spot on this very limited war cabinet, and this is really being now seen as a move, as a way of preventing this from happening, which could further strain relations with international partners.
Meanwhile, Israel has begun daily tactical pauses to allow for humanitarian aid deliveries into Gaza. The United Nations aid agency, UNRWA, has welcomed the move but says there are still some logistical issues to move the aid to affected areas. Jody Jacobs reports from the UN headquarters in New York.
As of Monday, trucks carrying humanitarian aid were allowed to safely cross into Gaza via the Karim Shalom crossing. For now, this will be the only border crossing that will be used for aid deliveries as part of these daily tactical pauses in fighting along the main roads into Gaza. UNRWA, the UN's aid organization in Gaza, says it hopes that Hamas will respect the decision.
Russian President Vladimir Putin will travel to North Korea on Tuesday. Kim Jong-un visited Russia last year. The two strongmen leaders have a closening relationship, assisting each other's countries with military goals. On Monday, NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg met with US President Joe Biden at the White House. It comes after nearly 80 countries convened in Switzerland for a summit aimed at agreeing a peace deal for Ukraine, though Russia was not invited and China did not attend. South Africa's former president Jacob Zuma says his political party, MK, will join the opposition alliance in parliament following last month's elections. Their vote was won by President Cyril Ramaphosa's African National Congress, but it lost its outright majority for the first time since the end of apartheid. And
Je pense qu'on est une génération qui peut faire la différence.
The captain of France's national football team, Kylian Mbappe, is calling upon young people to vote in the upcoming French election, warning that extremists are at the gates of power. His timely intervention during the European Championship follows French President Emmanuel Macron's decision to call a snap parliamentary election, on the heels of a big victory for his rival Marine Le Pen's right-wing national rally in European contests. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, a look at Vladimir Putin's offer of peace talks with Ukraine. The Russian leader said on Friday that he would be willing to negotiate with President Volodymyr Zelensky, but only under certain conditions. Military analyst and former Air Vice Marshal Sean Bell says the Russian leader's proposals are a non-starter.
All he's said is if Ukrainian forces withdraw out of those 4 occupied regions, they're occupied by Russia, and says that Ukraine won't join NATO, then of course he'll call a ceasefire. And you go, the aims of Putin's invasion were almost certainly to try and seize the Donbass region and try and stop the expansion of NATO. So what is he actually saying here? Putin has been trying to capitalize on this window of opportunity when the West's weapons weren't flowing to Ukraine, really struggling to make any significant breakthrough. Now the momentum is being lost, and all of a sudden it's looking a bit less rosy for Russia on the battlefields.
At the weekend summit in Switzerland, designed to breathe life into Ukraine's separate proposals for peace talks, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen described the Kremlin's gambit as a non-starter. She said it was a recipe for future wars of aggression. Russia was not invited to the gathering in Switzerland over the weekend, and Chinese officials didn't show up. But the Ukrainians claim the weekend talks were a fresh show of support for their efforts to push back against Russian aggression. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our top stories again. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has disbanded his war cabinet. It was set up in the wake of the October 7th attack by Hamas. Meanwhile, Israel's begun daily tactical pauses to allow for humanitarian aid deliveries into Gaza. On Monday, NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg sat down with US President Joe Biden at the White House. And on Tuesday, Russian President Vladimir Putin will travel to North Korea. That's the latest feature story news. I'm Benji Haya in Washington.
Following reports earlier today that Indiana University freshman Lawrence Plotnick's roommate Brian Tabor has found an excuse to go home every weekend since August, Plotnick spoke to Onion reporters about his roommate's frequent trips to his nearby hometown of Terre Haute, Indiana.
Every week since we got here, it seems like every time I ask him if he wants to hang out on Friday, he has some wedding or birthday party or something. In fact, I'm pretty sure he hasn't spent a single Friday or Saturday night on campus in the past 6 months.
Plotnick went on to cite a variety of far-ranging excuses used by his roommate to justify his constant visits home, including various family functions, a visiting friend from China, as well as his occasional desire to, quote, just hang out at home for a couple of days.
I mean, I suppose I vaguely understood when he had to go back in November because his best friend's grandfather died, but last weekend he had to go back for his aunt and uncle's wedding anniversary. He said he couldn't miss it.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and we are here on site in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Absolutely gorgeous day. I'm hoping it stays like this a little while because the weather can be somewhat unreliable in New Hampshire, and it can be delayed a lot. Like you can say it's going to thunderstorm Wednesday or whatever, and ultimately it doesn't arrive until Saturday. That seems to happen a lot. But it is a gorgeous day here. Overcast, but feels fantastic. Like this.
Did it rain like 2 hours ago?
It sprinkled a little bit.
It did that in Franconia Notch where I was, and I was like, dang, like the sun is gone. It basically looks like sunset at 1:30 p.m. That really annoyed me. And then the rain happened, but it stopped within like less than 10 minutes, and it was kind of sprinkly like you're saying. So I was happy that ended.
It's a bit of a concern to me because the canopy that we're under does in fact have holes in it. So if it's genuinely going to thunderstorm, I'm gonna have to. I thought we had a tarp, but if we did, we do have one. I guess I just didn't think to grab it. But definitely some pinholes and stuff like that. I'll have to put a tarp over it, and that's gonna suck. But
well, to be fair, like positive. Last time I looked, it showed Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, all thunderstorming and like 70% chance, but now it only shows Friday, Sunday, and Monday and 40% chance, so...
Okay, that's good news. I'm hoping it doesn't thunderstorm at all.
Yeah, maybe...
It does rain here every year, but a little bit of rain's not going to be a problem. It's not going to hurt the equipment, and everything will be fine.
But worst case scenario, we can always go down there and do the show in the mobile studio, which is fantastic. I'm very happy with the way it's turned out.
Just such a smart idea from Mark.
Yeah, it was.
A lot of times he has like incredibly wacky, silly ideas. But this was a great one.
And full spoiler, I was against this thing from the beginning. I hated the idea because Mark was like, well, we need it because the studio's been rated twice. I was like, well, Mark, Ian has been rated twice. And the studio got rated because it's in the same place that Ian was. So why don't... And he wanted to also get an office somewhere and put the studio there. I was like, we don't need to do both of these things. We just need a separate studio that we can do the show from. But, Mark persuaded Ian, and the Shire Free Church bought this thing. And I was like, well, this is a boondoggle that I want no part in. So Ian, but I was part of it. Like Ian showed me how all of it worked and what he was doing to put it all together. Then, of course, I went to prison. I came back out, and it was more or less in the same condition that it was in then. And now it's just sort of become my problem/responsibility. I don't mind it. And now I'm looking, I'm like, this was actually a really good idea. Well played, Mark. you contributed one thing to the show over the last 3 years.
And the Porcupine Freedom Festival, whether he knew it would happen or not.
I'm sorry?
And he contributed to the Porcupine Freedom Festival this year. But he's not here.
He's not, and he usually comes. I'm a bit disappointed that he's not here.
Me too. I 99% wouldn't care about sharing a motel room with him, but the 1% that I would care about is that he snores.
Yeah,
so,
and he's Mark, so there's zero chance he's going to get his own room. Like, I mean, he would have to rent a room at this point. Like, buy one.
Where's my room?
Yeah.
When he arrives.
That's exactly what he'd say. All right, which one of these is mine? What do you mean, Mark? Are you on the show still? Because I wasn't aware that you were. I love Mark, though, and I just love giving him a hard time about it. Because I feel like giving him a hard time helps motivate him to stay more involved with the show. And I don't know if it's working or not, but he's very hands-off with everything. Like, I was talking to him about the mobile studio, and I was like, look, man, if you want me to be responsible for this, I don't object to it. But I can't have other people making these decisions for it without my input, like bringing it to Porcfest. Like, I had no input on that. It was just here.
I'll ask you after the fact about that. But he did secure an advertising thing for us, which I'm not going to announce or anything because I don't know if I can.
Right.
But so he's at least
fantastic.
A little involved. That happened 2 days ago or something.
Nice. So he's definitely still involved with the show, but when I told him this, he was like, yeah, I don't really care. Like, he said, do what you got to do. I don't really care. He's like, they're adults. They'll presumably take care of it. I was like, I know, but like, it's set up now and it's expensive. And like, this is, Ian put a lot of money into this. The Shire Free Church, they put a lot of money into this thing, close to $200,000 or $250,000, I believe. The trailer itself was super expensive. I don't remember the exact amount, but it was not cheap.
I did not know any of that.
I don't remember now. I'd have to go through my records, but yeah.
Plus, he also put time into it. Like there was it was 2 summers ago, and he would go out there every day and put things together. And then also he created a little binder with instructions, so that way if somebody else has to figure out the mobile studio and Ian's in prison, then it's figure outable.
And the result is absolutely great. I'm very pleased with it. And next year for sure, we will be using it. We will still have the canopies here, I think. But I think the goal will be to park the trailer there.
Yeah, at our site. That would be awesome.
Yeah, so that the glass window is facing this way.
It can be opened up, right?
Yeah.
So people can look in.
So we can have speakers blowing out. We can have our audiences here instead of having the show here. And I think that will be fantastic. Because I wanted to escalate our presence at the festival anyway. Like, Free Talk Live has been doing this for 20-something years, and we've been coming to the Porcupine Freedom Festival for 15 of those years, at least. But when you look around, there's all of these new podcasts that I haven't even heard of that are just killing us on presentation. When you walk by them, they've got 20 people sitting there listening to the show, and we've got the longest tenure of anyone in the Liberty community.
This is something I've talked to Ian about since I met him. Why don't we do this and this and this? And he's just I don't know why. I think he might have been getting kind of burned out on Free Talk Live, and then 2020 happened, kind of re-interested people in libertarian ideas, and he got re-interested again. And now, then he was focusing on going to prison. So literally, we were had half or less of the mental energy than we typically would during the pre-trial stuff, and then during the trial, and then during the pre-sentencing stuff.
Yeah, it was a stressful, hectic time where, like, we had all discussed these things, like starting a new podcast, starting some video series, doing this, doing that other thing, and they were all great ideas that we wanted to move forward on. Then the raid happened, and then Ian and I weren't allowed to have contact for 6 months, and then we were, but it was like, why would we don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 years. We might go to prison for 30 years. Why would we instead of putting our efforts into creating new projects that we won't be able to continue a year from now, let's just focus on what we're doing and keep those maintained, and we'll deal with the future when we arrive at it. And I wish that Ian was here, but he's not. We are going to get the cardboard cutout that we have of Ian that Beer Talk Live and Captain graciously is going to allow us to use, and we're going to put it here with some legal pads for people to write Ian letters. So people can just stop by, they can write a quick letter, they'll drop it in the box, and then at the end of Porcfest, I will take those all, throw them in envelopes with the pictures that they taken with Ian's cardboard cutout, and I will mail those to him.
That's nice. One thing that happened was you tried to send Ian pictures before you weren't allowed to talk to him.
Right.
Well, he told me that they arrived, but the officers took them, Xeroxed them, and then gave him that.
They sent the pictures back to the company, or they gave him the pictures?
They threw away the pictures or whatever they do, because I don't know if they do this in the camp, but in the prison, they don't give you the physical letter someone sent you. They Xerox it. Oh, so it's different in the camp?
Yeah, in the camp you get the actual physical letter.
Yeah, every time, even if it's just written in black ink and nothing else, they Xerox it, keep a copy, and give or do whatever with their copy, and then give you just the copy. And so they didn't give him like the actual physical pictures. He could tell they like sat it on a copy machine, Xeroxed them or whatever, and gave them to him as like printed on a sheet of paper. But whenever you get the ability to talk to him again, or if anybody else wants to, for any reason, give him a high-quality picture, Shutterfly worked. I sent him pictures on Shutterfly, and I didn't send any of Jazzy.
So he didn't get the pictures from me at all?
He did.
Right? Oh, he did, just the copies of them.
Yeah, like it's like that's kind of defeats purpose, because like the purpose is to have a high-quality, like, you know, glossy, like printed picture.
But they did let Shutterfly pictures through, like the actual photographs?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I will start using that then.
And I don't know how he does, but he got a picture book. So he literally has
They have those on commissary for like $25.
Oh, okay. So yeah, he has them like, they're like 4x6. And they just slide into the pockets, you know.
That's real awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear he finally got them. I was worried after I got banned that they were like, that maybe that was what alerted them to the fact that we were communicating. Like, I didn't think anything about it. Because he and I have a court order allowing us to communicate. So I didn't expect there to be any problems whatsoever. But there were. And as a result, the BOP put me on Ian's banned list. I've appealed that. I haven't heard back from the warden about that. I don't expect to hear back from it anytime soon. But I know what the warden is going to say. He's going to say no. He's a warden of a federal prison.
It seems like it's the job of the person that a request from a non-government person. Okay, so a non-government person like Ian, they put in a request. It's the job of the first government bureaucrat that request reaches to say no. It seems like that's always the case in like every, not just prison, but like every thing you do. And then the second person you come to could say yes or no.
That's definitely been my experience as well, except with this appeal, it specified that I had to appeal it directly to the warden in the first place. I would expect to have to appeal it with Ian's counselor, whoever is the counselor of Unit JA, and they would tell me no, at which point I would appeal it to the actual warden or the AW, the associate warden. Instead, they're like, nope, you got to go directly to the warden, in which case my appeal would be with the regional director of the BOP, who's almost certainly going to say no as well. But that's what these bureaucrats do. They love telling people no, and that's exactly what they're going to do here. However, I've already begun the process of doing this and fighting this battle out in a federal courtroom, because that's ultimately what it's going to come down to, is me against the lawyers, the attorneys for the BOP, arguing that, hey guys, look, I was incarcerated for a white-collar crime, not having a business license. I did my time, and you already gave us this pretrial motion condition that allowed us to have contact. Nothing has really changed. Ian can provide valuable insight, valuable assistance, valuable tech support, valuable everything. And like we need him to provide those things.
For the business. Like that's like the point.
The problem is you're not allowed to run a business from prison.
Oh.
But like he's not running the business. So it should be it should be fine for him to provide tech support and everything else. And I was there for 11 months with no incidents whatsoever, never got a single write-up, never got a single disciplinary report, not for anything, right?
They haven't said anything to him about like, oh, you're not supposed to do Free Talk Live things, so that's good.
That's good.
I don't know if I told you, but I went to the city of Keene and requested with them to be, like, the Shire Free Church become non-taxable.
Okay.
And I forget like the exact wording used for that, like what form it was or anything, but I did all that correctly, and I of course got denied. So that's like
Obviously,
the same situation, like first time you get denied, but they lay out in the denial paper now. Ian said it didn't have this before, like how you appeal the decision to like try again.
Okay.
So I'm going to do that.
Awesome. Well, I hope that certainly works out. And I hope that the appeal that I have with the BOP works out, but I don't think it will. And even if it does, my U.S. probation officer has already said no to allowing me to have contact with Ian. So I have to fight this battle on two fronts, both with the BOP, the Bureau of Prisons, and with my probation officer. The probation officer thing, I cannot persuade her. There is no appeal process there. The only thing I can do there is get a motion from the court, because she works for the court, U.S. probation does. I have to get a approval from the court to have contact with Ian Freeman. And I suspect with the judge that we have, that would be relatively forthcoming.
It's going to be LaPlante again?
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't expect significant issues from that. And I suspect I will have really good legal assistance in the background helping me with this exact motion. Of course, I would be the one having to argue this in the courtroom. But I kind of look forward to that, knowing what I know now, because I can't say it enough. If I had known then what I know now, I would have represented myself. And I would have gone to trial representing myself. Now, I had a fantastic attorney. He was great. He didn't do anything wrong. But he wasn't allowed, because of the Bar Association and his relationships with the prosecutors and the judge, he wasn't allowed to make the kind of arguments that needed to be made.
Me and Jay Noon talk about this all the time. Just like I really believed that like the best decision was to get a lawyer. Now I really kind of don't.
Yeah.
Like sometimes people say like, oh, you should have represented yourself, and it annoys me because I'm like, you don't know how complicated federal trials are. It's not just like that I'm saying like, oh, you won't do a good job. I'm saying you don't know like, oh, at this point we filed this thing, and then at this point it's time for this. It's like all these stupid like, and then after this we do this thing, like stupid names, like different Latin names, you know. And that would be the main reason that I would think a lawyer would be a good idea. But if you could like get through all that stuff somehow and then represent yourself in the trial, it would have been better. Like,
so that would be ideal, to have an attorney providing background assistance, to advising me.
Like, the attorney acts like, okay, this is my case now, and I'm going to do this and make these decisions. Like, he tricked me into not being able to testify, and that pisses me off.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Like, he was like, oh yeah, I'm considering, I'll let you know. And then I am there the first day, and then the second day I'm like, Ian, I really want to testify. I'm like fired up, and he's like, so Sissy told me since you watched the first day of the trial, you're not qualified to testify. I didn't know that was a thing. And like,
I didn't know that was a thing either.
Yeah, because you would have already witnessed part of their arguments or whatever. And know
so you're
what
not
to
allowed
say
to witness
or whatever.
the trial if you want to testify? That's crazy.
Exactly. It's so crazy. And I would have never known that. And so like that's how he tricked me, I swear. Like I even had to literally get him to ask the judge to let me in. So it's not like he was like, oh, I didn't know Bonnie was there, because I forgot my ID. So I had to like wait in the lobby until the Sisti, Ian's lawyer, talked to the judge to get the judge to let me in. And then the next day, like, oh, sorry, Bonnie, you can't testify now. He just didn't like me or something. He, like, considered me a wild card. It's like, you're a wild card, dude. Like, you don't know him, and you never really tried to get to know him. Like, not even meeting his wife, like hardly like small talk, but like I wasn't allowed in the meetings and stuff like that.
Yeah, I have my own gripes with Sisti. I feel like he screwed Ian over.
Yeah.
And I feel like a motion of ineffective legal counsel would probably succeed. However,
it's probably too late.
It's probably too late, and he's probably not going to find an attorney in New Hampshire who's willing to fight that battle and ruin their relationship with Mark Sisti.
The other thing about it is that, dang it, I forgot. I always ask myself this type of question, like line of thinking and questioning to myself in different situations. What would look different? What would be different if Sisti was actually trying to make Ian lose?
Yeah.
What would look different? Like if he's trying to make Ian lose but didn't want to, like what would be different? How would that possibly look any different? And it's not like I'm saying I hate this person or I know for sure that that's what happened. I'm not. It's just I was so disappointed with the way that the trial went down. It's just like I had like 2.5 years to think of like, oh, this is a good thing to say, this is a good thing to do, and he didn't really try to make any effort into making Ian look like a good person. It made me think that he didn't believe Ian is innocent or a good person.
What really set me off and made me doubtful of Sisti's willingness to really help Ian was the lack of motions from Mark Sisti in regard to Ian. Right, like there was a motion to dismiss counts 1, 2, and 3, which was my operating an unlicensed money transmitting business charge, Ian's likewise charge, and the conspiracy charge. And that was filed by my attorney. And Mark had said before that he had told Ian something. Ian wanted him to do something, and Sisti said something to the effect of, well, I can't do it right now. These motions are about to start flying like crazy, and then he never filed a single one.
Whoa, I didn't know about that.
Ian said in July of that year, July of 2021, no, it was July of 2022 maybe, that he wanted to smoke pot. So he was going to have Sisti look into that and fight the legal battle to allow him to smoke marijuana for the PTSD caused by the raid. And Sisti's response was, yeah, you know what? That's a good idea. I feel like litigating something. Let's make that happen. And then it never happened.
He was like, let's do it. He said so many things like that made it seem like he was like, yeah, I'm ready to be on your side. I'm like fired up about this. I care.
And then none of these motions ever happened. And then the trial occurred. And you have a certain deadline after the trial to file certain motions. Sisti filed none of them. And then Richard Guerriero came to represent Ian, and Richard filed a bunch of them, and the judge dismissed them immediately, saying, hey, these aren't timely.
Yeah,
you should have filed these 6 months ago. Well, he didn't have an attorney 6 months ago that was willing to file these motions.
Sucks.
So I have very little respect for Mark Sisti at this point. Maybe he did the best he could. I don't know. But the best he could do clearly was not good enough. He, as far as I could tell, he repeatedly lied to Ian. He didn't file any motions on his behalf. The Daubert motion for chain analysis not being allowed into court, the dismissal charges, the dismissal motions, all of those were done by Richard Guerriero. And Mark Sisti basically just filed something that said, oh yeah, us too.
Yeah.
And that was the extent of it. But as far as actually filing anything, he was supposed to have filed to have this charge dismissed for this reason, that charge dismissed for this reason. That's the sort of thing that happens prior to the trial.
Like normally every lawyer would do that.
But if you look online on Recap or Court Listener, wherever you look for these things, Sisti did none of them. Not a single one. So, it's hard to say that I feel like Sisti really did his best for Ian, and I think that if Ian could find an attorney that was willing to take it up, that he had ineffective legal counsel. And as far as I'm aware, Sisti was telling him the entire time, no, you're going to get found now guilty. Don't even worry about it. You're good to go. It's a slam dunk case. Whereas my attorney was telling me, oh yeah, you're going to get found guilty. It's a slam dunk case for the prosecutors. They're going to find you guilty. This is why they're going to do it. This is how it's going to do it. This is the argument that we could make that might help you and that might prevent that, but we're not allowed to make that argument. That's been prohibited. So they're going to find you guilty.
Even as a person, I talk to Mark Sisti, I feel like he's like guarding, like what I gotta play my cards right, what can I say and not say, blah blah. And then like talking to Richard Guerriero is like a normal, nice person who just acts normal.
Yeah.
Like not like pretending he's like a mafia member.
Yeah, Sisti did give me that kind of vibe. Yeah,
Yeah.
with the slicked back hair and the ponytail and all that. Like, he looks cool for an attorney, and that's great, right? That's the kind of attorney that I would expect Ian to ultimately end up with. But I would also expect an attorney who looked like that to be damn good at their jobs. And my impression of this was that, like, there was one crack attorney, by which I mean they were just fantastic, and that was Richard Guerriero. Like, what was her that crazy lady's name? Anessa
Santos.
God.
Yeah,
Oh,
I cussed her out on. I called her. Oh wait, I can't say
you
that.
can't say that on the air.
I called her something I can't say on the air on
But
Twitter.
she 100% deserved it because she was a defense attorney. She was an attorney for nobody, aka Rich Paul, and then she goes out there on Twitter and goes, Ian Freeman didn't just screw over his customers. He also defrauded his friends and all this other crap, alleging that...
And she specifically said, like, I was a defense attorney on this case. I have inside knowledge of this and all this stuff. And it was like, I could probably seek legal avenues because of this. And I'm not going to because it's just not the kind of person I am, like, over speech. But I probably could have.
Fun fact, I fired her. She was initially my attorney for about 3 days, but she started being very manipulative. And one of the conversations we had over the phone where she was trying to get me to fire Richard Guerriero, and I was completely unwilling to do that. And she's like, Aria, you have to understand, he's just in it for the money. And I'm like, Anessa, he's my public defender.
That's so weird.
I asked him if I could take him private to get the court out of this, and he said, you're not going to get anything better out of me by paying me privately versus letting the court pay me. So just let the court pay me.
Yeah, literally, that's like a very honest, like, trustworthy thing to do.
Yep. There's more coming up here, though. We are at the Porcupine Freedom Festival, so stay tuned. There's more coming up. It is Free Talk Live.
Membership has its privileges. I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. Are you a AAA member? Nice to have, just in case, but think beyond breakdowns and dead batteries. At AAA.com, you can peruse discounts on tickets to concerts, games, and movies and amusement parks, including Disney World and Universal. When you book a hotel room, look for a special rate. And keep scrolling for Office Max and Office Depot and Omaha Steaks, and lots of restaurants have member discounts too. Ditto AARP, whose members also find air travel and cruise deals and tour packages. It won't take long to recoup your $16 annual dues. And while the American Association of Retired Persons is dedicated to people over 50, there is no minimum age to join. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has disbanded his war cabinet. It was set up in the wake of the October 7th attack by Hamas, which sparked a deadly conflict in Gaza. But opposition leader Benny Gantz quit the cabinet, citing a lack of strategy for the ongoing war. Sarah Coates is our correspondent in Israel.
Now, this was widely expected after the departure of Benny Gantz and also the former military chief of staff Gary Eisenkot, who held an observer role on the war cabinet. They joined after October 7 to stop the far right from making key decisions on war efforts and also to show unity. Now, the far right elements of the government, specifically the National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir and the Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, they have been pushing for a spot on this very limited war cabinet, and this is really being now seen as a move, as a way of preventing this from happening, which could further strain relations with international partners.
Meanwhile, Israel has begun daily tactical pauses to allow for humanitarian aid deliveries into Gaza. The United Nations aid agency, UNRWA, has welcomed the move but says there are still some logistical issues to move the aid to affected areas. Jody Jacobs reports from the UN headquarters in New York.
As of Monday, trucks carrying humanitarian aid were allowed to safely cross into Gaza via the Karim Shalom crossing. For now, this will be the only border crossing that will be used for aid deliveries as part of these daily tactical pauses in fighting along the main roads into Gaza. UNRWA, the UN's aid organization in Gaza, says it hopes that Hamas will respect the decision.
Russian President Vladimir Putin will travel to North Korea on Tuesday. Kim Jong-un visited Russia last year. The two strongmen leaders have a closening relationship, assisting each other's countries with military goals. On Monday, NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg met with US President Joe Biden at the White House. It comes after nearly 80 countries convened in Switzerland for a summit aimed at agreeing a peace deal for Ukraine, though Russia was not invited and China did not attend. South Africa's former president Jacob Zuma says his political party, MK, will join the opposition alliance in parliament following last month's elections. Their vote was won by President Cyril Ramaphosa's African National Congress, but it lost its outright majority for the first time since the end of apartheid. And
Je pense qu'on est une génération qui peut faire la différence.
The captain of France's national football team, Kylian Mbappe, is calling upon young people to vote in the upcoming French election, warning that extremists are at the gates of power. His timely intervention during the European Championship follows French President Emmanuel Macron's decision to call a snap parliamentary election, on the heels of a big victory for his rival Marine Le Pen's right-wing national rally in European contests. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live from Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Porcfest tickets are still available if you look online. I believe they're going for $150 a piece right now. So, like, you waited to the last minute, so you're going to pay the price for that. That's good.
Yeah, I paid $125.
I don't actually know what my tickets ended up costing because I was in prison at the time. And I was like, hey, Mark, will you buy me 2 tickets? And he very graciously did. And we actually redeemed them today. And the bags this year are really cool.
I need to go check in.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Like, you got here and I basically immediately asked you to sit down so we could start doing the show.
I don't think it's going to run out of time.
No, absolutely not. I just feel bad because, like, when you first get here, you want to walk around and see all the people and, interact and probably get something to eat and just chill and relax.
Even when I got here, like, Wormtown was still setting up, so.
Dude, I'm so happy to see them. Every year I'm worried that they've decided not to come this year because they're late arrivals.
And they had a crazy incident last year.
They had a crazy what?
They had a crazy incident last year where somebody was violent towards one of them.
Oh, that's right, they did.
It wasn't a Free Stater, it was like a random attendee that nobody knew. No one knew.
That dude was a mess. We were doing the show here when he sat down and he just started talking. He was on acid, I believe, at the time. And so I asked him politely, I was like, hey, man, you're going to have to leave if you're talking because we're, like, recording, right? And we're not going to put your acid rambling on the air, so you're going to have to leave.
I never heard this story, I don't think, because I didn't encounter him.
But he ended up not leaving, but he did stay quiet for a little bit. So finally we rounded out the show for that day, and I needed to go to my hotel room to get some water or whatever the hell I needed. I don't remember.
He's just creeping you out?
No, it's way worse than that. Because I knew he wasn't leaving the site. So I turned around once I got up to where Kirby's Q is. Well, it's not Kirby's Q anymore. It's just their site. But they don't actually do the restaurant there anymore. Anyway, I turned around, and I see the dude sitting in this chair where I'm at right now, trying to log into my laptop.
Oh, my God.
So I came back over, and I was like, hey, man, no, okay, you have to leave our site. You're no longer welcome. He was like, well, why? What did I do? I was like, dude, you're trying to log into my laptop.
That's insane. He's probably the person that went around stealing things last year.
Very likely. And his excuse was, well, I thought it was here for anyone to use. Why would you think that?
Why would you think that? No one would think that. It's not set up in some way that would make any rational person think that. But he's obviously on drugs. So.
Yeah, it's encrypted and password protected, dude. If it was meant for you to use, it would not be either of those things. So he did ultimately leave because I was firm. And I was like... But I was firm with him, and he did ultimately leave, which was nice. But then, like 12 hours later, he took a crystal that was on display with the Wormtown people.
Like a 10-pound crystal, not like a little one.
Yeah, and he hit someone else in the head with it.
Like made them bleed.
Whereupon, I think it was Mo and a few other people who tackled him to the ground. That was one of the few occasions where I think the authorities got called out here, and it was probably a good idea for the authorities to come out here. It wasn't the only time last year, though, that the cops ended up coming out to the Porcupine Freedom Festival, and it's a bit tragic what I saw last year, because they were called because someone had done too many drugs of some description, and they were having a bad time. So they called the paramedics, and of course the police came as well. And I happened to be sort of near the area walking my dog at the time, and I noticed that this police car had pulled up. So I went over there with my phone out, recording the interchange, right, as one is supposed to do, like police the police. We're libertarians. This is what we do. We film the police to make sure they don't get out of line. And I looked around. I was the only person recording the police. There were 20 or 30 of us libertarians there that were just like watching, but only one of us with our camera out recording them. Other people were texting and other garbage. I'm like, guys, there's a thing going on here. Like, I don't want to say it's your job as a libertarian, but like it's your job as a libertarian to record the police while they're here at Porcfest.
It is a service.
In previous years...
But it's like a duty to do it, sorry.
In previous years, libertarians would chase the cops out of here by following them around with cameras. It's happened. I have not seen it, but I've seen the videos. And there would be 20 to 30 libertarians with cameras just following the cop vehicle all the way up until they left.
That's hilarious.
And the cop was like, well, screw this. I'm not dealing with it. I'm just going to leave. And like, that's more or less what we want. We will keep ourselves taken care of. We will keep ourselves under control.
Maybe it's like the fact that like they were like in the moment with like the guy who is hurt or something, because people are like, did you film it? And I'm like, dang it, I didn't, because it was like a situation involving me where I'm like, in the moment, like I don't even think it didn't never occur to my brain to start filming sometimes, and that annoys me that I do that like pretty often.
There used to be a cop block training sort of thing, and I'm giving strong consideration to resuming this with some videos. And
that'd be cool.
Because I don't want to do actual training of people, right? Because that would be too tedious. But
that's awesome. Because like when I first got into becoming a libertarian, it was because like I had a bad interaction with the cop. I literally told the whole story again on the show last night, but Sunday night. But basically after that I was like, I know I should have done things differently, but how are you supposed to know what you should do? So I like started looking up things like that, and I found Cop Blog because of it, and I learned a lot. But there was no thing that was just like you Google what to do when you see a cop and like find a video that like tells you almost exactly, because like different states are gonna have different things in some circumstances, but there could be videos that tell you mostly what exactly you should do, and that would be a great idea.
Thank you. I'm giving more and more consideration to it, especially when I hear these positive things about it, because I think it would be helpful for people, because they don't really know what they can and can't say, or what they should and shouldn't say when they get pulled over, especially when it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you're coming home from work, a cop pulls you over, and they ask, where you going tonight? All you have to do is say, I'm traveling for pleasure. You don't have to give them an answer, that you don't have to tell them your destination. You have to provide them your ID, but that's it. Just, I'm traveling for pleasure. That's all they need to know. They'll continue pressing you, and you can just say, I don't answer questions.
That's why one of my favorite cop blog videos, like of all time, was young Mr. Gordon. I don't know if he wants me to say his name. Wait, that's his name too. Yeah. He was 11 years old.
He would love for you to say his name. Yeah, that was little Mikey, man. 7 years Gordon. Old out there. Yeah.
He was 11, I think, and he walked up to a cop that was like parked on the side of the road and he does exactly what they do to people. He says, "Can I ask what you're doing?" The cop's like, I'm doing my job or whatever, and he's like, it was just kind of suspicious. You're just sitting here. Where are you heading? It's so
Dude,
funny. That's so great.
Hardcore. I freaking love Mikey.
It's great. Man. Like if anyone was to do that, it'd be hilarious and great. But like the fact that he was, I think, 11 is so funny.
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
It was absolutely epic, and I love that sort of thing, man. It's helpful and it's good. But it is difficult, and I understand. Like when I first got pulled over in Keene, I was uncertain too. I put out the message on Cell 411, and that got Ian and Matt Roach and a few other libertarians to show up.
Nice.
Whereupon I felt much safer about the situation, and they asked me, have you been recording? And I was like, oh, no, I didn't think about it. I was like, well, did you answer their question? They're like, well, yeah, of course I did, because the training is important. It's important to know what you don't have to say, and once you start getting into the habit of telling cops no, it's so much easier. Like the first time is the difficult time.
Right.
After that, it's just a matter of habit.
I mean, and especially if you just don't even know you can do it, because I'm not going to tell the whole story, but like last night I was talking about how the incident with cops that basically turned me into a libertarian. I just did everything they said. We're going to have to ask you to blah, 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 because I didn't know you were just allowed to say no. Like, if I could go back in time, I would have no charges from that incident because I was standing behind, like, there's these desks at, like, hotels for, like, the front desk person that are completely enclosed. So, like, they couldn't get close to me. And they're like, we're going to need you to come around. If I hadn't done just that, then I would have been fine. Since I came around and like stood right next to them to talk to them because I thought I had to, they were like, we think we smell alcohol on you, which was a lie. Like, it just was a lie. It's
For those who don't know, when a cop says something like that to you, we're going to need you to do this. Always say, is that an order or a request?
Yeah.
Because more often than not, it's going to be a request which you do not have to comply with. If they say it's an order, then yes, you're going to have to comply. But you can also ask, well, what statute or law authorizes you to give this order?
Yeah, which is why some people just say, is that a lawful order?
Right.
Because then they'll have to tell you why.
Because then if they're ordering you to do something and they believe it's a lawful order and they're wrong, then you get to sue them. And it's really easy to win that kind of case. Yeah, they're going to violate your constitutional rights in the process, but you will ultimately win that particular war. However, if they say we're going to need you to do this, well, okay, I need a lot of things. I need a couple of $1 billion, right? Let's say, like, are you just sharing your feelings with me? Because I'm going to need you to leave.
Yeah, I know, right?
So you have to listen very closely to what they say and how they're saying it. And they're trained for this. That's the screwed up thing about the United States, really, is that the police officers, they spend years being trained on how to do what they do.
Yeah, they're not just like it's just a chance thing where they're just taking advantage of like 20-year-old Bonnie in that case. No, they are trained to do things a certain way to manipulate you into complying with them without them having to actually like assert lawful authority.
Right. Yep, it's literally part of their training. And
they're trained to lie.
Yep. And there are cops out there who have become disillusioned and they run various websites. I wish I could remember the name of it, but it outlines how messed up police training actually is. And so when you go into one of these interactions with a cop, you are at an automatic disadvantage. This cop has been trained for this exact situation and you have not. You're uncertain. Plus, this guy has a badge. He has lawful authority that he gets to assert, which puts you at further disadvantage.
If he hurts you or something, he has all these excuses that will get him out of it. He almost never is going to get in trouble. But if you hurt him, it's not just like a regular assault charge. It's like prison for life type charges.
Yep. And you have to rely on that cop's body camera to protect you.
And that it's on.
The best thing to do is to immediately start filming. And you don't have to explain why to the cop. And if they say, we need you to stop filming, say, no, you don't. Or just don't even respond to it. And when you tell them that you don't answer questions, they will always say, what does that mean? And your response to that will be, I don't answer questions.
Yeah.
And because that's the game they play. They're trained to ask you questions and get answers out of you. The moment you budge from I don't answer questions is the moment they start getting information out of you. And there's nothing you can say to a cop that is going to make your life easier.
And they try to like trip you up too. Like they try to get you all riled up. Then they accuse you of being the one doing that. Like a different situation, a cop did this to me where I was just like, okay, well, can I leave, blah, blah, blah. You know, I started getting like talking fast, getting annoyed, and he's like, why are you so nervous? Why are you freaking out? And it's like, because you walked up to me being a bitch.
Yeah.
Oh wait, can I say that?
Well, you did, so, and I'm not going to bother editing. I'm pretty sure you can say that.
Oh well, yeah.
It's just a reference to a female dog.
Yeah.
So it should be fine.
Only whatever girl pig is.
A
sow. You came over being a sow.
Yeah, there you go. But they are hostile, and I thought I was going to get pulled over on my way up here when this state trooper did a U-turn to get behind me. He followed me for about 1.5 miles, and I was like, that's all the signs. You know when a cop is about to pull you over. You can feel it in your bones, right? You know. And these are the people that 90% of Americans probably think are making us safer. They're serving and protecting. Remember these two things. Have you ever felt safer with a cop car behind you? And 2, nothing you can say to a cop will ever make your life better. It will only hurt you and make your life worse. So how much serving and protecting are they really doing for you? Obviously, they're not serving and protecting the American people.
If they were serving you, you would know because you would have a need you needed fulfilled. Yeah. It's just like this is a conversation we were having with Sarah last night, and it goes along with the conversation you were having with Dr. Matt Barney. Sarah was saying, like, well, what if you get old, Bonnie? Don't you want people to take care of you, like in the form of welfare? And I was like, Sarah, why don't you just like contribute to people's lives in a way that when you get old, you'll have a community of people that want to take care of you? And she was like, well, I do. I try to sell them my multi-level marketing soaps, and I try to give it to them for free. And then they start running away from me. And I was like, Sarah, that's a signal in the market. They don't want your soaps, so the market is telling you that by them running away and calling you a fraud and all this stuff she was saying. And it's kind of similar to what you were saying with Matt Barney, because it's like, you know, if you're helping other people, like, you will be able to pick up on it. There's like signals, and everything is kind of like the market.
I'm glad to hear Sarah is still calling. She has not called in on Monday night, but I assume that's because she thinks it's still a pre-recorded show. I don't know.
Probably, yeah.
But I first met her as Galactose Sarah. And that was because she was selling this thing called Galactose.
She was selling something else? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought that this was like her first run-in with selling stuff because she is like communist.
No, this is a habitual pattern for her. She gets involved in some multi-level marketing scheme, what most people would call a pyramid scheme. So she gets involved with it, and then she's not allowed by her pyramid scheme to try to sell it on the air.
Yeah, she never tells us the name or anything. I think she accidentally did one time, but I don't really care enough. It's not like I like want to get her in trouble. It's just that I think that it's such a dumb. It's not that it's dumb. It's intelligent for these people that make MLM things. But I think it's in a way a little immoral. And Dana did call and convince me to retract that a little bit. But I think it can be done in a moral way. Like Dana was saying, like, I always make sure that it's something that is the right fit for the person who's talking to me. They tell me they compliment my skin, and so I sell them my Mary Kay because I'm like, oh, this is what I use on my skin. Like, that is fine. But if you're like Sarah and you're like trying to like force things on people that are literally running away from you, and okay, I don't want to even say like Sarah, but I just know like most people kind of take an immoral stance.
Sarah is a weird creature for sure, because she is literally called into the show to talk about how much she loves, the death penalty.
Yeah, and also she has told me as a communist, she thinks it would be great if everybody who's rich in the country went and had all their stuff taken from them. So she actually is immoral. I'm not going to like take back saying that she's probably immoral.
She is. She loves the death penalty, and she has said that she supports the death penalty. And this was a really tragic conversation because Ian and I pointed out to her that we know for a fact, thanks to the work at the Innocent Project, we know for a fact that some number of people in prison are not guilty of the crimes that they've been charged with. Some of them pled guilty or confessed.
And there have been people killed with the death penalty, and later it came out that they were at least like most likely innocent. Right.
That's exactly the point that we were getting at with her, and that's what we did ultimately point out to her, that we know for a fact that some of these people killed via the death penalty were innocent of their crimes. And she's like, well, I'm okay with that as long as we also get the guilty ones. And that's a violation of any precept of moral justice. Yeah. Like, moral justice it doesn't begin with the maxim, but it contains the maxim that I would rather have 1,000 guilty people go free than one innocent person be punished.
What are those people called? Objectivists. They don't believe that. Not objectivists. I don't remember the word, but it's basically what Turd was trying to argue with us that one time when he was like, if there was somebody who was going to do a terrorist attack and you could prevent it by waterboarding someone who is innocent, wouldn't you do it? And I was like, no. Right. Like, I'm a moral person. I wouldn't waterboard someone who is innocent, period. Like, all these secondary things, that's not me. It's not like you were going to do the terrorist attack if you didn't waterboard this person. No, that's not going to happen.
Ultimately, it comes down, those kind of discussions come down to, like, you have to choose between two immoral things. So which one of these immoral things would you rather do? And it's like, dude, I would rather not do something immoral.
Yeah, it's like...
And that argument is beyond their comprehension.
Like with the trolley problem, I think the person who laid it out the best is a Quora answer by Dennis Pratt. And he was saying the only moral answer is to not touch the lever. I mean, but if it is someone who you love, you're a little bit exempt from saving their life, even if it kills more people, because it's like, it's human nature. You you love that person more, and somebody's going to die anyway, either way. And it's not saying, it's not that it's 100% moral, but it's just like, yeah, you're going to do it. If your baby is strapped to the railroad and the other option kills 3 people you don't know.
Well, an option a lot of people overlook is that many actions are in fact amoral, where it's completely morally neutral. Like, I'm going to drink this Red Bull. That's not morally good or morally bad. It's just morally neutral. And the same is sort of true of the trolley problem, which for those who don't know, it's that you control a lever that if you pull it, it's going to run over X number of people. And if you don't pull it, it's going to run over Y number of people. And it wants you to pick which one of these you'd rather let happen to. And Bonnie's example is that, look, if your baby is strapped to one of these or your partner or whatever, you're going to save your partner. And that's not immoral. It's also not morally good because you are pulling the lever and that is going to cause people to die, but people are going to die anyway, right? So it's not morally bad either. It would just be morally neutral.
I don't really think you can make the case that one person's life is worth less than 3 people's lives.
I don't think so either.
Because they're all priceless.
Right. I would absolutely agree with that. But at the same time, yeah, I would save your life if you were on one of these tracks, and I didn't know anyone on any of these others. I'd be like, oh, sorry guys. I mean, I'm going to make this decision for personal reasons because I have to make this decision. But like, someone's going to die anyways, and I'm not going to let it be my friend. So it's a difficult. That's the problem with the trolley problem, is that it discards amorality as a valid approach, when I think the vast majority of actions that people engage in have nothing to do with morality.
Now, which Free Talk Live host would I save? I'm just kidding.
Well, hopefully all of them, but granted, some people do like to interrupt a whole lot.
I would save all of them. Just
That's
kidding.
Good. So the Porcupine Freedom Festival is shaping up. It is beautiful here, and it is day 1. The sun is we're starting to get to the dusk part of the day. The show ran kind of late.
And the sun kind of came out now. It was like behind clouds all day, and now it's kind of out of being behind clouds, but it's setting, so it's nice lighting.
I feel really bad because you got here and I immediately asked you to sit down and do the show, and there's so many people here to see, and they're going to be so happy to see you.
I'm here for the week.
Yeah, you are here for the week.
For the first time ever. I've never even spent the night at Rogers ever.
I know, it's a good experience. It really is. And the whole festival is fantastic. I can't recommend it more highly enough. Porcfest is ultimately the reason I came to New Hampshire in the first place. Back when I was doing Call to Freedom with Will Coley, he told me that he had an extra Porcfest ticket and he wanted to know if I would go. And I was like, well, yeah, sure. I've got nothing else to do with my life. So why not? Because I was already doing the show with him. So I was like, why not? And I came up here with him and his family, and I fell in love with the place. It was fantastic. I met Mikey, Jew Mikey, that year.
Oh.
And I don't mind calling him that.
I just really like him, Mikey the Jew.
Yeah.
On the way in, I tried to call you, but I think I just didn't have signal. Because
my phone was on silent and I wasn't anywhere near the booth.
I tried to call 2 people and I don't think it was even ringing. But anyways, I just wanted instructions on how to get in. But I see him across the street at his ghetto. So that's what he's calling it.
Oh, he's not here at the campground anymore?
No, he's across the street because he's not allowed in during, quote, Porcfest. So as of now, his decision is not to break the rule. Don't know if he's going to. But he has his own ghetto set up. I might go hang out with him again. And he's giving away seed oil-laced food. And but I went over there to just be like, hey, can you tell me what to do? Because I only have entered Porcfest with Ian. I don't know what to do. Oh, you're going the wrong way. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So he explained it to me.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward, and once you've done it once, you can do it a million times.
Yeah,
they're pretty easy
so fast
to work
too.
with. Yeah.
I went to the front end and I was like, my name is Bonnie. I don't know if it's gonna be under my name. And some obviously senior woman to the other one just came up and was like, Freeman. Yep, it blah 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 blah, and it took less than a minute.
Yeah,
nice.
They are really good like that. It took a little bit longer for me, but only that was because they had a sheet of paper of check-ins that day, and because of the arrangement that Free Talk Live has with Rogers Campground, we weren't on that sheet of paper, so they had to look within the actual computer. I assume it was easier for you because I had just told them 3 days ago, I was like, hey, Bonnie is coming here. She's coming to room. I'm not saying, and she's going to be here, so just be prepared for that. Don't rent the room out to anyone else. She's coming.
Thank you.
So it's all
because I worried about that. I was like, what if they think I forfeited it because I didn't come during Porcfest?
That's usually why I end up claiming the keys for both rooms when I get here, because there's always Free Talk Live hosts who need a place to stay or something. Like last year, I think Peakless used it with someone. I don't remember who. And the year before that, Marla, and I think nobody used it. I don't remember all of the specifics of who has used it and when, but like we had this extra room that was available and no one else who was allowed to stay overnight.
I really wish Riley could come. I offered. I no, didn't offer because it wasn't mine, but I got him in touch with somebody that could get him a room. But I think there's just so many things that would be like up in the air for a blind person to come to this event.
It could be very difficult, yeah.
I had so much to plan. I really couldn't like give of myself to like help plan things. I feel bad. So maybe like next year, maybe next year Ian will be out of prison on appeal or something.
I certainly hope so.
That would make it way easier for me to then be like of assistance to Riley to come.
Yeah, I would love to see Riley here as well. Riley, for those who don't know, he's been on the show more and more lately. He is the person who does the daily digest for us, where he takes like the 30 to 45 minutes best parts of the show and he just puts that online. He's blind. And if you've ever watched him use his phone, it's absolutely stunning how he can, because he just sort of taps on it in certain ways and certain places.
It like says things out loud and he knows what to click.
But editing out the best parts of a radio show to make them into a podcast, that's not easy to do when you can see.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to do, like, at this point for me, because I'm technical enough to know how to do it, and I've been doing it long enough. But, like, I can't imagine trying to do that without the ability to see. That is extraordinary. So, Riley, thank you so much for everything that you do. And I want to say thank you to the Free State Project and its new director for putting on this year's Porcupine Freedom Festival. I look forward to it. I look forward to the rant competition.
I do think Alu should not be banned, and that really pisses me off.
Yeah, I understand that.
And I know they're going to say, we didn't ban him, we asked him to leave, but I saw the text. The text was...
Some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it'll cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you're feeling so inspired. You'll get a special membership badge that's visible in the Odyssey chat room, and if we get enough support,